I'm Swapnil Kote, and I welcome you all to the fourth series of our session, Vocal for Local, a wonderful initiative started by the Thane branch of ICI, where we encourage the local speakers to come ahead and share their knowledge with us. Today's session is a very unique session. The topic of the today is commonly observed ethical issues in CA practice with related case studies. In short, ethics is something that governs each and every one of us. Rather, it's one of the strong pillars of our society, leave alone our profession. All our behavior, all our professional actions, if governed by the ethical things, it will lead to the glorious profession of ours. But unfortunately, some of them are flouted here and there. Today, we will discover what are the ethical problems that are faced by chartered accountants in their day to day lives and how you can resolve them or how you should avoid them. Today's speaker we have with us CA Mangesh Kinare. But before that, I would also like to welcome the special guest for today's session, MLC Advocate Niranjan Daukare, sir. We welcome you, sir, to this wonderful session of ours. Before moving ahead, I would just request the chairman of Thane branch, Shiv Bhagwan Asawa ji, to give his opening remarks.
Thank you, CA Sapnil. Dear members, a very warm welcome to all of you. I really hope you and your loved ones are in pink of health as I am. I really appreciate that you have taken the time out for this session on a weekday and amid the challenging time. Welcome once again, our very own Niranjan Daukare sir. He does not need any introduction, at least to Thanekas. I have worked with him during first wave of pandemic last year. Never ever he has made to realize that he is MLC, very down to earth person. Once again, I welcome MLC Niranjan Daukare sir. Coming to the today's seminar, Code of Ethics, we have the best man to deal with the subject, his very own CA Mangesh Kinare sir. We also recognize presence of past WRC chairperson PT Savla ma'am, RCM Kamlesh Sabu sir, and all other dignitaries. Before going further, we have few announcements. Vocal for Local Series 4. This series starts from today, will last till 13th. All the speakers are from MMRDA region as the name of the series suggested. Please do attend in all the dates. Respected members, I encourage you to ask any question freely through chat box only. Let's make this session engaging and helpful. Now I request Swapnil Kolte to take charge of further proceedings. Swapnil, over to you.
Yes, sir. Before moving ahead, we would hear from Niranjan sir. Niranjan sir does not need any special introduction. He's a very well-known face in the city of Thane. But to give a brief introduction about Niranjan sir, he's one of the most highly educated public representative that Maharashtra is blessed with. Niranjan sir is a member of the Legislative Council from Konkan Graduate Constituency, an advocate by profession, and a resident of Thane. He has been helping out the CA Institute for last couple of years with various programs and has been a great help to the CA Institute and will always be grateful to you, sir. Niranjan sir, if you could address us with your kind words, we'd be grateful.
Thank you, Swapnil. Dear professional brothers and sisters, I thank Thane branch chairman Shri Asawa ji and my colleague Vinod Tikmani to give me this opportunity to be a part of this discussion. And today's topic, I believe, is a very important topic. It's about ethics. May it be the field for doctors, for CAs, or for politicians. Ethics is a very important part of all their professional career because it keeps you grounded and simultaneously it maintains a balance in the society, which is very essential for a smooth working and to ensure a homogeneous environment in the society. Since the era of Ramayana, we have always been taught ethics through various mythologies and through various Puranas. I believe the topic of today will ensure more and more use of ethics in your professions because it is an essential part for all of us in our working life. I would also like to appreciate what Asavaji right now said, a Vocal for Local speaker series, which is a very nice platform for the local speakers and to get an insight what for the people of other parts to get an insight of what is happening professionally in other people's area. Also, I'm sure it will help all the upcoming CAs and professionals. I would like to mention, hello?
Yeah. You are audible.
Sorry.
Yes, sir,
Niranjan, sir.
you're audible,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah, sorry. I would also like to mention that during the pandemic period, Asawa ji and Vinod Tikmani were very active on the field. Especially, I would like to thank the juices that they have distributed not only in Thane but in the whole of the MMRD region. And they have been relentlessly working on. Vinod was literally calling me during the second wave. We were speaking every day for beds, for ICU beds, for ventilators. And also, you all know that we had a 3-day camp of vaccination recently. And throughout the vaccination camp, Vinod and his whole team did a very good work. And we were successfully able to vaccinate 3,095 people. And still, the drive is being working in other areas. I would like to request all of you or through Asawa ji and everyone that अगर CAs के लिए या अपने professionals के लिए या आपके through जितने लोगों को vaccinate करना है तो कोई specific camp लेना है तो we will surely be able to help for it. I would like to thank once again all of you to giving me this opportunity to speak and communicate with all of you. Thank you. Thank you, Sabuji, and thank you all.
Thank you so much, sir. We'll definitely seek your help for the vaccination thing, which we definitely need for our members. And we'll trouble you with that again this time. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Now, moving ahead with the program, now I request CA Rahul Kharat to introduce the speaker for the session, CA Mangesh Kinare. Rahul? Rahul, are you there with us?
Yes, I'm there.
Yeah, thank you, Rahul.
Thank you, Swapnil. I'm glad to introduce Mangesh Kinare, sir. He's become LLB General, FCA, DISA, ICAI. Then his professional experience, he has around 3 decades of experience. Main areas of practice is GST and business consultancy. Moving ahead, positions in ICAI, which he has held. 3 terms he was there in WRC. Then he was secretary in WRC for 2010-11. Then he was chairman elected in for the year 13-14. Central Council member for the ICI term 16-19. During his ICI term of 16-19, he was vice chairman of Board of Studies. Now, all of you will know why Asawa said he is the best person for today's session. Sir was member of a bench of disciplinary committee of ICF for 2 years, Quasi Judiciary Authority. Then moving ahead, nominations by ICI, was nominated as member of Education and Continuous Professional Development Committee of South Asian Federation of Accountants, SAFA, what we called for year 17-18. Represented ICI in WTO, World Economic Forum in Geneva, Switzerland, 2016. Going ahead, other positions held, appointed by Government of India as Independent Director on MOIL Limited, State Government Nominee on Financial Committee of Babasaheb Ambedkar Technology University, Lonri District, Raigad. When I introduced Mangesh sir, and that too for today's session, I remember of what Socrates says. Before you speak to someone, use 3 filter theory. Is it good? Is it true? And finally, is it useful? So, thank you, Swapnil, for allowing me to introduce Mangesh sir. Over to you, Swapnil.
Mangesh, sir, the stage is all yours. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rahul. Mangesh, sir, can you please take over from here?
Thank you, Swapnil, and thank you, Rahul, for reducing the introduction. I mean, that's better because it's very awkward when you are being introduced in front of your own people. Rather, I mean, when I say friends, it's really all friends are there. But let me take some names because of their dignitaries. They are in the institute. The chairman of the Thane branch, C. Shiv Bhagwan Asawa, vice chairman and secretary Swapnil Kolte, committee member and past secretary Rahul Garat, the past chairman of WIRC and who were treasurer with me when I was the chairman, Preeti Saula, Kamlesh Sabu, the regional council member and the branch nominee. I hope I have not missed anybody. Of course, Niranjan Davkareji in absentia. I cannot call, I mean, my good friend, because all are good friends. So all friends, seniors, I know I can see some seniors also attending, and that is putting a lot of pressure on me. Although I've spoken on this subject on this forum earlier also, I think Asavaji has put me in some, what you can say, more difficulty in the saying that it has to be more practical rather than on the theoretical basis. I'm trying to be more practical today. Of course, the earlier session was also on the practical aspects, but trying to be more case study based, rather cases which I have encountered or I've come across as a DC member or as a council member, or today or these days also many people discuss many cases. So I'll try and take you through. But if we restrict ourselves only to the cases, then perhaps we'll not be giving a justice to the subject. And that is why I'm running through some slides where the certain provisions, certain issues will be discussed, and a lot of issues will be there, I know. And what is our subject today is the commonly observed issues. So Asavaji, can I share the screen?
आप शेयर कर सकते हैं,
आप देख सकते हैं?
Yes, yes, आपका स्क्रीन आ गया सामने.
ठीक है.
Good to go.
Yeah, now I have been speaking a lot in this pandemic for last 1.5 years or so, 1 year and 3 months or so. Basically, friends, let us have a disclaimer. I'm always giving this disclaimer that we are relying heavily on the technology, of course, mainly on technology. Naturally, if at all there is any disturbances in the internet, etc., please excuse me. I have 3 internets lying up in my office, and I'll try, if at all there's an issue, I'll try and shuttle it. So I would request the branch people also to support in that case. Secondly, there are problems in such cases, at times, जैसे पेंडेमिक में सबके लिए तकलीफ है घर पे बैठने की, स्पीकर्स को भी ये बहुत तकलीफ होती है कि when you sit and you are speaking in front of screen and you are not seeing anybody there. I know most of you may be listening to it, and rather all of you may be seeing the screen also, but certain provisions I may be referring to the screen, right? Because certain provision I may be referring to the presentation. So I would request, if at all you can, you're interested, I mean, you can look at the screen rather than simply listening to it. And lastly, there are certain issues, if at all, to be discussed. I think, as Asavaji mentioned, you can put it in chat box. We will discuss it at some 10-15 minutes at the end. I know there may be many issues in this. Before I begin, let me acknowledge that I have started speaking on this subject, say in 2017 or so, when I became a DC member. And of course, the first lecture which I took, I mean, at the insistence of Preeti Saula, only in Mulund CP Study Circle. And then it started. But I have been helped in this a lot. I mean, this may be around, I mean, I may have crossed 100 sessions on only this subject, including a session on the foreign forum, that is abroad forum, including a session in the past president's Padma Shri Manoranji's office, including a session to the, what you can say, the peer reviewers. But let me acknowledge that although whoever may say expert, that there is no expertise in this. There are a lot of things developing. You might have seen me just speaking to somebody. I was speaking to Vazesa regarding one more development which I just noticed while reading it again for this session. So I'm acknowledging that always, and when I encounter something, I talk to at least 2 people. One is Mr. Vaze, and one is, of course, Mr. Amarjit Chopra, our past president, who helped me a lot in this, in addition to, of course, the Kimisha Soni, who was a past chairperson of Ethical Standard Board. Helped me a lot in developing my knowledge regarding this subject so that we can discuss more and in detail. With this, let me begin the presentation or discussion, so to say. Asavaji, screen change ho raha hai na? Swapnil?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So, although these are not
Screen
these are not issues per se, but I think I prefer start of the session with these 2 slides. That is why code of ethics. Now, code of ethics is there. Now, people feel that, of course, why it has to be codified. We know what is ethics. There are two reasons for this. One is that there has to be any structured manner. It has to be explained to the members, because the subject is so vast. The areas tackled by chartered accountants are so vast that we need to have a structured forum or structured law or kind of a thing in front of us, where we can find out, and or where we can refer to whenever there's a difficulty. Secondly, many of us may not be knowing. Rather, many times we curse the institute that institute में ये नहीं हो रहा है, ये ऐसा क्यों कर रहे हैं. We are abided by the Act of Parliament, so we cannot do anything and everything which other associations are doing. And most importantly, as far as this subject is concerned, we are part of the International Federation of Accountants, IFAC. Now, IFAC has its own rules. If any accounting body has to become a member of IFAC, they have to abide by the rules and regulations of IFAC. I had an opportunity to visit to a country called Papua New Guinea when I was in council. And I was a IFAC delegate to do the due diligence of the CPA Institute of Papua New Guinea. And that time also I realized, actually in 2016, sorry, it was 17, that what is the requirement for an institute to become in existence, and code of ethics is one such instrument. Now, friends, what is code of ethics? Why this code? Now, it enumerates the basic principles on which the chartered accountants should always carry himself or herself. Now, general application, I mean, of fundamental principles. Now, this code presumes that these fundamental principles, all chartered accountants are imbibing in them, right? And it presumes, now I know that all of us want to do or always doing the practice and intention with intention of ethics in our mind. We never want to be unethical, and those who want intentionally be unethical, they will not attend this session. I also know that. But at the same time, there are certain mistakes or there are certain issues might happen unknowingly in our practice. And that is why these fundamental principles should be kept always in our mind, that whether I'm violating this, if I'm violating this, then there's a breach of code of ethics. So what are these? Integrity, objectivity, professional competence, due care, confidentiality, and professional behavior. Or to this August gathering, I need not go on explaining each and every word in detail. But yes, we are supposed to be honest. We are supposed to be not to be influenced by any other person. We have to be in a professional competence on a subject we are tackling, and taking complete utmost care, having confidentiality about the matters we are handling, and above all, we must be a professional. And the behavior also, we must demonstrate the professional behavior. Now, I recollect, we all know that this profession of chartered accountancy has come into existence by virtue of Companies Act mainly, right? And from the perspective of audit. Now, many of us may be recollecting the definition of audit. I definitely recollect this definition of audit, which I have studied in my BCom days. It's by author called Spessier and Pegler, and it has just remained in my mind for so many years. That auditing definition says that it is such an examination of books, accounts, and vouchers and record as would enable an auditor to satisfy himself whether the balance sheet is true and fair, and profit and loss is true and fair, and so on and so forth. What is more important here is such examination as would enable an auditor to satisfy himself. So ultimately, friends, it is our satisfaction in what we are doing is important. इस law में क्या कहा है या ऐसे ही कहा है, and whatever it may be. I mean, we cannot find out excuse. We have to see that whether I am satisfied to my best ability in this or not. And that is what is the all fundamental principle: integrity, objectivity. Objectivity does not mean that you cannot take anybody else's opinion. There are ways and means of taking opinions, third-party opinions. On what basis we can rely on the third-party opinion? In what circumstances we can rely on that? So, but ultimately, it should be your or my opinion when I'm doing the audit. And competence and due care means we must have a competence. Unnecessarily, just because we have to increase the size of the firm, let's not do the work which we are not competent enough to handle. Now, these are the fundamental principles. What code says that there are 5 threats which may lead for compromising or non-compliance of this fundamental principle. These are self-interest threat, self-review, advocacy threat, familiarity, and intimidation. So every time we do the work, we have to assess that whether these threats are there in that kind of a work, which will somehow lead to compromising my fundamental principles. If yes, then I must try to apply the safeguards which are given. I'm not going in theoretical things, but I'm just telling you the entire outline. And after applying the safeguards, if I'm able to understand that these threats are reduced or removed, then I can think of taking the work. Otherwise, I must think whether I should accept the work or not. Now, these threats, self-interest, means whether a chartered accountant is having interest in what he is doing, direct or indirect, financial or other interest. Now, there can be, financial interest, direct interest, we know, but what can be an indirect interest? There can be two similar, line clients with us. One may be in a good, say, two jewelers are there with me. One is a very big jeweler, one is a very small jeweler. One is paying a very high fees to me, one is paying very small fees to me. Now, whether I create any interest, indirect interest in retaining that client and giving additional service to him, and that may lead to some kind of a compromise of fundamental principle to the smaller jeweler, smaller client, right? So that can be an indirect interest also, self-interest. There is another case, I'll be going on discussing the cases. Cases are not mentioned in this. There was one case where a chartered accountant was practicing from his office. His son was doing a kind of an investment consultancy that was also carried out from same office. The name board was also mentioned one below the other behind, outside the office. They used to print the card also together. That is not allowed. That's a different thing. Now, what happened was one client was advised regarding investment consultancy by the son, and that client, the email ID was shared also same, right? Then that client suffered a substantial loss in this, and that client filed a case against this chartered accountant. Chartered accountant said that I was not responsible for this, but the entire circumstantial evidence went to show that he had some interest in suggesting this financial planning for this client. And so, friends, self-interest threat is a very wide word. Self-review threat means we all know that whenever, suppose for a new client, we set up a accounting system and we only do the audit. It's kind of a we reviewing our own work. So there can be some sort of a laxity in verification. Advocacy means typically we all small and medium practitioners face that threat. When we advocate what we have done in front of the tax authorities or bank authorities or any authorities for that matter, naturally, we will tend to do the audit in such a manner that what is to be presented before these authorities. बैंक में ये परसेंटेज चाहिए तो बैलेंस शीट में ये परसेंटेज आ रहा है क्या, तो हम डायरेक्ट एक्सपेंसेस कम करके इनडायरेक्ट में डाले क्या, and all this kind of a thing. I am not saying that, but this kind of an advocacy threat may be there on the minds of the chartered accountants while doing the audit. Familiarity threat. Familiarity threat is a very common threat that we are doing everything for the client. Even the domestic problems also are discussed in the chartered accountant office. And these familiarity threat at times lead to overlooking certain aspects of the client, and naturally the objectivity, integrity, or due care aspects are compromised. And intimidation is nothing but when the client becomes powerful, the client becomes a major client of yours, they start dictating to you that we have to conduct the audit as per their wish. So these are the threats. Safeguards I'm not going to discuss because these are all detailed safeguards are there. Then, as I said, it will become a more theoretical session. I just wanted to touch upon in 5-10 minutes because this is what is an outline of code of ethics. Now, knowing this is outline of code of ethics, if we take a safeguard and remove these threats or release these threats, we can go ahead with the work. Otherwise, we will have to seriously think whether we can conduct this engagement or not. That is an outline. Now, with this trend, let us discuss what are the issues faced day in and day out. Now, as a practicing chartered accountant, which work I can carry out? Always, day before yesterday also, there was a question to me by a member that whether I can do this work or not. Now, friends, let us understand that what work we can do. There are certain legal provisions I have mentioned, but I'm not going in complete legal wordings of it. Section 2, subsection 2 of CA Act defines what is the work which can be done by chartered accountant. That is profession of accountancy, auditing, verification, preparation, verification. So all things relating to accounting and auditing are mentioned in this section 2, subsection 2. Now, whether I can handle the tax work or not, now that's the issue in front of people. So let's go ahead. The residuary clause under section 2, subsection 2 talks that such other services as prescribed by council. right? I have put star mark there. You can see there the last pointer on this. The council has prescribed around 28 services under management, consultancy, and other services which practicing chartered accountants can undertake. We'll see that 28 services. Going further, there is another provision in Regulation 191 regulation which says that which services can be undertaken by a practicing chartered accountant. Liquidator, advisor, appointment made by central government, so on and so forth. Now, in this, mic on. So, request to mute. So, second last thing talks about insolvency professional. So the question normally comes in such session that if I'm an insolvency professional or a valuer, registered valuer, as per the institute examinations, whether I have to take a COP or not, I'm not doing any practice. Friends, this provision of section 2 subsection 2 is a deeming provision. It says that a member of an institute is deemed to be in practice if it's carrying out these activities. If you're carrying out these activities, you are deemed to be in practice. There's no question of whether I can do a holding COP, requires COP or not. You are in practice if you are doing these activities. Now, going further, there is one confusion which I would like to clarify here, that insurance financial advisory services are covered under management consultancy and other services. But disturbance, somebody is having a mic still unmuted. No problem. Insurance financial advisory services are covered under management consultancy and other services. Now, this service is very clearly mentioned that excluding insurance agency. Now, what's the difference? Insurance financial advisory services and insurance agency. What's the difference? Insurance financial advisory services means if my client comes to me asking for the insurance models for his assets or life or employees or whatever it may be, I'm structuring it as per the financial his financial position. That is insurance financial advisory. The moment I refer any insurance company to him and ask for the kind of a payback from the insurance company, right? That becomes an insurance agency. We are not allowed to be an insurance agent, but yes, insurance financial advisory services we can undertake. And last in this, friends, is an administrative services. Now, what is administrative services? Now, administrative services have now been defined under volume 1. Right? Under volume 1, these administrative services have been defined. And here you can see that, I mean, typically assisting a client in a mechanical work is an administrative service. And the illustrations have been given in the volume 1. Volume 1 of Code of Ethics I'm talking about. As you know, there are 3 volumes of Code of Ethics, volume 1, volume 2, and volume 3. Volume 1 talks about general principles of Code of Ethics. Volume 2 talks about the application material, which normally we read. And volume 3 about the decided case laws on the matters. So I'll be covering mainly volume 2 today because the practical aspects are more in volume 2. Now, this administrative services says that, illustrative services says that word processing services, preparing for administrative and statutory forms for client approval. I have underlined that if you can see on the screen. Submitting such forms as instructed by client and monitoring statutory filing dates, etc., etc. Now, friends, as I said, I have underlined certain things. Preparing administrative or statutory forms for client approval and filing it as instructed by client. So client approval and instructions of clients are very relevant. Our session is being recorded. That's why I'm just restricting myself to mention that we need to have a client approval on record when we prepare the form and send to them for approval. And after the instructions of client, we can upload these forms on the tax portal. So return filing is covered here, that we can undertake the return filing. But friends, our code of ethics demands that there has to be a client approval and there has to be client instructions for this thing. We cannot do it ourselves. Correct? So that's what is administrative service which is allowed to us. And I think we all should take care in this regard to have a proper documentation as far as our return filing work is concerned. Going further, what are the issues? I mentioned here that a member, this was a question asked to me, a member doing a project finance work and also qualified as an insolvency professional, does he have to take a certificate of practice? I have mentioned already that the insolvency professional as well as professional finance, project finance work is covered under management consultancy and other services. Now, those services, if some member is carrying out, he is deemed to be a member in practice. Now, once you are deemed to be a member in practice, you must have a COP on your hand. Correct? So COP has to be taken in this regard. Now, it's the second issue which was raised. I mean, we can raise many issues and that can be tackled at the end, but I'm just discussing the issues which I have so far tackled in the meetings. Can a member who is a part-time in practice carry out a certification work? Now, people feel, especially those who are in industry, rather have taken a, doing an employment also and taken a COP thinking that they can do a certification work. Now, part-time in practice, once you are having another occupation and you are in part-time in practice, you cannot do any attest function. Now, attest function includes audit, review, and certification also. So a part-time person who is a part-time in practice cannot do the certification work at all. That is regarding the activities which can be carried out. The next issues faced by the members many times is regarding the engagement in other occupation. Now, there are so many queries on this, and I'll tackle at least some of them. Now, what engagements are allowed to us? What are the engagements which are allowed to us? Let us talk about that. I'm a practicing chartered accountant. Other than that, what I can do, rather than thinking it is what I cannot do, let's see what I can do. So I can be a director in a company. I should not be, of course, managing director or full-time director, right? And the company, in that company, my partner or myself should not be interested as an auditor of that company. So I can be a director in a company. Certain things I have highlighted in the purple font on this presentation, which are the actually new things which have been brought in Code of Ethics on 1st July 2020. Of course, this is not some amendment. This does not mean that earlier it was not applicable. Many of things are clarificatory in nature. So basically, I can be a director simpliciter. That word has been coined, the director simpliciter in a company. Now, what do you mean by director simpliciter? Director simpliciter means I can be a simple director. I cannot be a managing or full-time director. I can only attend the board meetings and I cannot take any remuneration other than sitting fees for attending that board meeting. Now, one has to be very, very careful when one is a director in any company, right? Now, there have been many cases. One famous case, which I always tell that in unintentionally how the people get trapped in this, that there were 4 or 5 directors in a company. One chartered accountant was also an independent director. Now, that independent director on the specific day, there was only one director in a city, and they got a sanction letter from bank which they had to sign. Other directors were at least abroad or something for some few days. They wanted the funding very fast, so they requested this practicing chartered accountant to sign the acceptance letter. There were 2 directors' signatures were required. This person signed in good faith at that point of time. That point of time, there was no issue. Subsequently, there was a dispute among the directors, and disputing directors filed a case against these directors, saying that they have misled us, and this person has, have joined hand with them, colluded with them. See how he has signed. It is illegal things which he has done. Friends, unfortunately, many times we get trapped because we try to help somebody. So in helping somebody also, that we have to be taking care of our code of ethics. So I'm allowed to be a director simpliciter, but it's a director simpliciter. I cannot go on doing an activities for the company. I cannot sign even at times people say that आप ROC का एक form sign कर दो ना, उसमें क्या statutory forms है, भाई तो करना है. We should not do, or we shall not do, right? So please remember that there are certain occupations which have been allowed to us by way of general permission or special permission. General permission means if we take this occupation along with our practice, we need not apply or we need not ask the institute. Special permission means we have to ask the institute and get the permission on record. Now, what are these general permissions? Friends, before going further, I would like to tell always, which I mentioned here in this Code of Ethics program, that when we are reading Code of Ethics, let us read with complete conservatism. Let's not try to find out the ways and means of taking some other meanings out of it. Now, many of the things are allowed generally also. That is private tutorship, authors of books and articles, holding public offices, honorary office bearer in charitable trust or NGOs, educational institutions, right? Part-time lecturers, paper setters with the institute, and so on and so forth. That is clearly allowed. Next two are very relevant, friends. Acting as a loss surveyor under Insurance Act or recovery consultants in bank. Many of us don't know that loss surveyor is one professional opportunity which is open to chartered accountants. I know at least a couple of chartered accountants in Mumbai, in western suburbs. I don't know about Thane or central suburbs, who are only and only practicing as loss surveyors. They are holding COP. Of course, they are required to hold COP, and they are acting only as loss surveyors under the Insurance Act. And it's a good profession. I think we can have one session also on that if we want. So loss surveyors, many of us are not knowing that this is allowed to us. Secondly, owning agricultural land and carrying agricultural activity. Now, friends, as I said, we have to interpret this in a very conservative manner. We are allowed to own agricultural land and carry out the agricultural activity. But friends, let us read it as it is. It is not the measure given to us for tax planning. It's basically why this provision is there. Many of the people from agricultural background or agricultural families include, I mean, like me also, have become a chartered accountant. My forefathers or my grandfathers and all were agriculturists. So we have become a chartered accountant. We have started a practice. So ancestrally, we may get one any land or something in our hand. And naturally, we are not supposed to sell it just because we are in practice. So we can do some activities over there, carry out certain activities through somebody. But this provision should be read in that perspective only. I cannot carry out any business under the guise of agriculture, right? I cannot start buying the lands, having proper crops taken up with a very scientific manner, employing laborers, employing kind of a machineries, having godowns, having a distribution system set. These kind of a thing under the agricultural activity, I should not take, and that should be restrictively rated. Lecturership in college, we all know that not exceeding 25 hours in a week, we are able to teach in the college. In fact, this was done since Nihar Bhai is president today. This was done way back in 2004 when Nihar Bhai was a regional council chairman. I was fortunate person to be in that group, and that's how the college lecturers were given the permission to have 25 teaching hours per week. Now, there are many issues, as I said. Now, we are allowed to be a director simpliciter in a company which is carrying out a business. What about LLP? It's also under the Companies Act only. It's also a corporate body only. Now, whether a like director simpliciter, non-designated, non-working or non-remuneration partner, whether we can be in a LLP which is carrying out the business activity. Now, in this code, they have very clearly explained, Institute has very clearly explained that there is no equivalence at all, right? So like director simpliciter, one cannot be a non-designated partner in LLP which is doing a business activity. If it's a chartered accountancy professionals LLP, no problem at all, right? Now, whether a director can be a promoter or signatory to the memorandum articles of association. Many times people come to us that you become a signatory, not as a consultant, but as a promoter director, we are allowed to do that. As a promoter only, after that, we are supposed to exit it. Whether I can have a majority 99% shareholding in a private company, I'm not being a director, I can have a 99% shareholding in a company, no problem at all. shares derivative transactions. So many issues are there in this. Now, recently there was a decision by the Ethical Standard Board and by the Council that derivative transactions are investment activities for a practicing chartered accountant if these are done on the personal account. So derivative transaction, if I am doing, it's a investment activity. It is allowed to me. It's not a business activity. Now, as regards shares, this is a personal opinion. I have written to the Ethical Standard Board that in regards shares, there is no such clarification. Now, primarily, shares is an investment, no doubt about it, primarily. But as you know, the intention and the kind of you can say the frequency is very important in this. If I'm doing a regularly intraday trading activities, then perhaps it is not allowed. Perhaps it is not an investment. We cannot take a shelter that's an investment. I'm not talking about income tax provision and all. Let's stick to this code of ethics only. Now, if I'm doing a regular trading activity, it's not an intraday, but buying after 2-3 days, selling, and it's a large quantity number of shares. If I'm doing it, I think it's a borderline situation. But yes, if I'm doing a infrequent activities, kabhi liya, baad mein becha, nahi becha, it may be a large number of shares, but I'm not doing it in a regular basis. Then perhaps we can withstand with the investment. This is my personal opinion. The second one will be a borderline activity. Now, what activities can be carried out in HUF? People feel that I can form an HUF and do these activities. Recently, there was a phone call to me that there is a kind of a consultancy which is expected from me on other matters. I don't want to disclose, then otherwise people will know the member. So on other matters not relating to profession, whether I can form an HUF and do these activities. First of all, in HUF, whether you can do a profession or not, that's a different thing altogether. But at the same time, as a chartered accountant in practice, we cannot do any activity in HUF except the investment. And what is meaning of investment? Investment का meaning हम सब लोग जानते हैं. Investment मतलब excess जो पैसा होता है, additional money is invested. So HUF के पास कहाँ से पैसा आता है? It is an ancestral thing, or at the most some gifts, and that gifts also one has to be very reasonable. Right? Now, from that, if I'm investing it, that is the only thing which I can do in HUF. I can't do these activities. Even my personal view, again, I've written derivative transactions, these are allowed in a personal account. So in HUF, whether I can carry out these activities or not, that's a very, very important question. And I think, to my mind, derivative transaction, HUF, one has to be very careful. Let us take an opinion on that. Now, there was an interesting query to me, friends. That a father was carrying out a business. A son is a practicing chartered accountant. A father is carrying out a business, and he has got incapacitated because of some age or whatever illness and all. So the general power of attorney he wants to give to the son to carry out the to do all the kinds of activity on his behalf. Whether a practicing chartered accountant can do that? In my personal humble view, at present, there is no permission at all. So one will have to go for a special permission for this, right? Now, I'm doubtful whether special permission we will receive or not in this case, because this is nothing but indirect way of doing the business activity. And therefore, friends, this was just very recently, somebody had asked me the question and I thought that I will take it today. Very interesting question. And this is a genuine case. I know that's a genuine case. But in a genuine case also, council, I personally feel that will not give such permission of having a general power of attorney of father. Forget about having a general power of attorney from any director or anybody for that matter. So friends, people feel that if I'm allowed, see next this thing, recent decisions of Ethical Standard Board. In that second, acting as an authorized representative of foreign company, provided he is not an auditor of that company. Now, there are limitations to this. Now, please read this with the context. There are limitations to this. One cannot go on taking a business decisions for a company. It's an authorized representative, right? Having an authorized office. There are rules and regulations, as I suppose in RBI also, that what kind of authorized office a foreign company can have in India, right? So that liaising offices, in that perspective, this is allowed to us. So we cannot have a general power of attorney of running the business over here. So that please take into account. So I've given you certain recent decisions of ethical standard board also, which perhaps people feel that it is, am I allowed to do it or not? So we can register ourselves in on Udyog Aadhaar, a web portal of MSME Ministry. Then registration authority obtaining digital signatures for client is allowed. For clients, please remember, I can be a registering authority. Settler of a trust allowed to me, right? So that kind of a thing is allowed to us as far as the other engagements and occupations are concerned. There are certain cases, very interesting cases. Now, there is, as I said, sir, many of the cases which I will narrate today are where the people unknowingly have become a guilty or unknowingly have violated this. There was one person teaching in a coaching class within that parameters of 25 hours and all. Now, what happened was, he was also in practice. What happened was that coaching class displayed a banner in the city. Now, on that banner, his name and photograph was printed, and below that, it was mentioned so and so person, practicing chartered accountant, expert in so and so. Now, not only under this clause, under the clause of solicitation also, it will be covered. But friends, whether he's a director in that or not, sorry, it was mentioned director, and it was mentioned that practicing chartered accountant. Now, whether one can become a director in a coaching class. Now, very important, whether one can be a director in a coaching class company. Now, here it was such a case, it was in front of our bench that there were only two directors, and one, he was teaching also in coaching class. So naturally, he was an executive director, and it was interpreted that he's an executive director and he's engaged in other business and profession and he's advertising himself. So he was held guilty. But in a similar case, friend, in front of our bench only, what happened was that a director, he was a director in a coaching class and teaching in a coaching class. Subsequently, he started a practice. And there was a charge against him that he's indulging in the additional activity, but he provided a proof with an ROC filing that he resigned from directorship, right, before starting the practice. Now, he can teach in a coaching class within that restrictive period of that 25 days. So properly, if you have a document, there is no harm in doing that. So proper documentation was there. One very, very interesting case came in front of us, that father was doing a business, and in his business, for whatever reason, he had made his son director, or I think partner, or something of that sort. Subsequently, that son started, I mean, मैं बताना नहीं चाहता हूँ, it happened in his village, I mean, or the native place. Subsequently, that son came to Mumbai or such other place, I don't want to say Mumbai, such other place to do his chartered accountancy. Now, he became a chartered accountant, he started a COP also. Unfortunately, that retirement, because वो गांव में था, जुना matter था, he just forgot. And we all know that within our profession only, many people are there to pull our legs. Now, this was completely unintentional. We could see that that this is an unintentional error. But this was brought to the notice, and the case was filed against this person. So, especially there are young members listening to this session. When you take a COP, if at all you are from business family, you have somebody, father might have started something in your name, that, I mean, in a very good faith. So let's discontinue that if you are starting the COP. Otherwise, unnecessarily, this will come to problem later on. Now, portfolio management, whether it is allowed. One issue was raised, and that's why I'm just taking out. It is not allowed to us doing a portfolio management. Friends, going further, when we are appointed as an auditor, appointment as an auditor. Now, what care we have to take? Now, this is very, very relevant, friends, and many cases we have seen coming to us. Many times, without disrespect to that profession, but many times, chartered accountants heavily rely on company secretaries as far as companies are concerned. And we know that, अरे आपने कर दिया ना, चलो ठीक है, filing हो गया ना सब. Now, while accepting an audit appointment, we must check that this ascertain whether there are, all the provisions regarding the appointment have been complied or not. This is not a session on Companies Act, but friends, this is very important. Compliance with the provision of Section 139 and 140 of Companies Act are very, very important, right? What are the issues faced here? Statutory filing kabhi hua nahi rehta hai. If my statutory filing as an auditor has not been done, whether I should conduct, accept an appointment or start an audit or not, very important and relevant question, right? Now, that might be a procedural lapse, but to my mind, we must insist that the statutory filing must be done before we at least sign the audit report. Then non-appointment of the retiring auditor. Now, many cases come, right? Many people ask, अरे सर वो क्या हो गया कि वो उनको ऑडिटर निकालना था और लास्ट टाइम पीरियड थे टैक्स ऑडिट का, अदरवाइज उनको 1 लाख की पेनल्टी आ जाती थी, देन ऑडिटर वो नहीं कर रहा था, सो मैंने कर दिया और उन्होंने तो रिमूव कर दिया. Unfortunately, many of the chartered accountants are still, sorry to use this word, not aware of this provision that removal of the auditor cannot be done unilaterally by the board of directors. There is a process for it. There has to be a special notice and there has to be resolution, there has to be central government permission, right? But I know very recently also I have encountered such case and I have been talking to that person, and I feel genuinely he was not knowing, but that is not an excuse. We must know these provisions that as an auditor, when we are appointed, whether my appointment is proper or not. Even a retiring auditor, if he is not appointed, right, there's a proper notice should be given to him. So we must ascertain certain things. There are proper council guidelines which are mentioned in Code of Ethics for this. Ensure whether the notice was served on members as well as outgoing auditors or not, right? And obtain the minutes duly. I'm just taking many important guidelines. There is detailed guidelines are there. At least take a minute signed by the chairman, duly authorized. So we must satisfy ourselves that the AGM has happened. There was a case in front of our bench only, and I always take this very, very unfortunate thing which we had to rule. There was a very senior member from Southern India that he, what happened was the audit was conducted for 5 years. There was nothing in the company, For 5 years, somebody, just another chartered accountant who was a consultant to that company came to him, sir, aap sign karo na, humko regularize karna hai, ROC matters. He signed it prospectively, not retrospectively. Correct? And he signed in good faith, kuch nahi hai, chalo theek hai, prospectively sign karna hai, no problem at all. Unfortunately, subsequently, there was a dispute in the directors, and it was found that the AGM, they had not done this, formalities at all, holding an AGM and all those kind of things. So notice was not there. And the case was filed against this chartered accountant simply to show that the other directors are cheating us. And how they are cheating us, they have appointed their own auditor and they have started this activity without telling us. And just to say that, just to prove that, the case was filed against the CA. He was a very senior chartered accountant. Unfortunately, we ourselves gave at least 2 hearings to him. Ourselves gave 2 adjournment. आप कुछ भी करके कुछ ना कुछ तो लेके आओ. But he could not produce that. So please see that many times अपना ही कोई चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट ब्रदर सिस्टर लेके आते हैं कि यार मैं कंसल्टेंट हूँ यार, देखना सब ठीक है, आप साइन कर दो इसके ऊपर. And we do that. But please ensure that these formalities have been complied or not. Very recently, our firm also has received such an audit. We have flatly denied. Right? See that the formalities have been completed or not. There are important points. There is another case. Okay, I can. Asavaji ne case कहने को कहा है. There was another case where very unique. Company was formed, and you will be knowing that the first auditors will have to be appointed within the 30 days of the registration of the company. This auditor was by the board of directors. So board of directors appointed this auditor, and he started doing audit also. Unfortunately, subsequently the case was filed against him. It was in the pretext that, see, बहुत बार ऐसा होता है कि dispute उनमें रहता है and we are made scapegoats. The dispute amongst them was there. The issue was that he was not appointed within that 30-day span. कुछ 40-45 days हुए थे registration होके. The provision is if 30 days the directors cannot appoint, they have to go to the extraordinary general meeting. Now this provision was not complied. Please mute your mics. Somebody has not muted the mic. I don't have any issues. Your personal discussions, everybody can hear. So this kind of a case, where chartered accountant good faith accepted without checking whether the compliance was done or not. Now, friends, like companies, there are many issues in the trust and cooperative societies also. So proper appointment letters will have to be taken in the hand from the trust and cooperative societies. And relevant acts also have to be checked. Now, as always, it is being mentioned that in a cooperative society, there is always lack of cooperation, and in the trust, there is always lack of trust. So please see what is the trust deed says, how the appointment has to be made. Now, if the appointment has to be made accordingly, one has to see that the appointment has been made or not. So these provisions will have to be checked very thoroughly. Even in case of a partnership firm, whether see the deed and see whether there is any stipulations regarding the appointment of auditor or not. Certain deeds have the stipulations. So please see that, and accordingly only the appointment should be there. Now, in appointments or conducting an audit, there is one provision which had been discussed in the WhatsApp some couple of months back about section 410 of volume 1 of this code of ethics. It is about fees. If it's overdue fees, whether I can accept an appointment or not. Now it says that the self-interest threat might be created if the fees is outstanding for the last year. Because as we say now, if the fees is outstanding, where is the auditor is put in the balance sheet? On the credit side, on the liability side, creditor. Now, if I'm a creditor of a company, right, as if I'm giving something to the company, I have not taken something from the company or from a client. Now, whether there is an independence, whether there is a self-interest threat, that is being discussed in this section. Please remember, there was a lot of furor in this WhatsApp group that it's not like that. The code doesn't say that you need not take or you cannot take. Code says that verify whether there is any self-interest threat or not. If it is not there, if I'm conducting an audit properly, code doesn't say that you can't do like that. So what is the suggestion of the code? They obtain at least the partial fees. Don't keep it pending for long, right? आप कुछ ले ही नहीं रहे, इसका मतलब आपने लोन ही दिया हुआ है ना client को. So in fact, this will be helpful to us in recovering some part of the fees from the client. And second alternative is have a proper review of your work from an independent person. So you can tell a client, देखो भाई आपको additional पैसा देना पड़ेगा, right? So that we must take into account that this review has to be done by somebody, third person, that the work has been conducted properly. Correct? So that one has to undertake when we are changing the audit. Going further, friends, communication, lot of issues again can be discussed in this, lot of cases can be discussed in this. Now in communication, friends, the chartered accountant in practice should communicate in writing with the CA who has previously holding this position. And that kind of a communication should be before acceptance. So what are the main points or what are the main issues in this? It is applicable to all types of audit, because it says that before accepting an audit, position of an auditor. So it is applicable to all types of audit. An audit, what does it mean by audit? Where the reasonable assurance is given, it's an audit. That kind of assurance function is an audit. So internal audits, concurrent audits, to my mind, even a forensic audits. So all kinds of audits are covered, and the communication is a must in this. Second important aspect of this is it is previously held by chartered accountant. It is not previous year chartered accountant. So typically in a tax audit, first year there is an audit, second year there is no audit, third year there is no audit, fourth year an audit is there. So fourth year auditor has to communicate with the first year auditor. Very relevant. Very importantly, this communication must be before acceptance of the audit. Now, friends, I can cite one case here that typically it was a private limited company, and generally we all know that statutory audit and tax audit is done together in the private limited company. Of course, UDIN era में शायद issue नहीं आएगा. Now, what happened was one chartered accountant was doing audit, tax, and tax audit for one company. Now, for whatever reason, I mean, he didn't want to continue as an auditor and tax auditor of that company. He thought that he'll be a tax consultant only. So he conveyed to a company, he resigned. The company also voluntarily appointed another person. Everything was going on fine. This appointment took place somewhere on, say, 10th September. Tax audit 30 September ko karna tha. So proper communication appointment was given on 10th September and the communication was done. He also mentioned no problem at all. He communicated. Subsequently, when signing took place, we all know we are more eager to help our clients, right? उनको company को 30 सितंबर के अंदर AGM करनी है ना, so 21 days का notice होना चाहिए, तो हमको भी पहले balance sheet sign करना पड़ेगा. So like that, he signed the balance sheet on 31st of August. Now, after some years, there was some dispute with this chartered accountant, earlier chartered accountant, regarding his tax consultation fees. So he filed a case against this new chartered accountant just to take a revenge on the client. कि ये chartered accountant कुछ पैसा लेके आएगा मेरा. So he filed a case against this new auditor saying that you have communicated with me on 10th September. I have also given you no problem at all. But you signed the balance sheet on 31st of August. So you have communicated with me after signing or after acceptance of an audit, not before acceptance of such appointment. So you are guilty here. See, it's completely unintentional, right? Then I don't want to go in detail of that case later on what happened. But such kind of a mistake can be there. Let's not try and help the client at our cost. Then modes of communication, we all know what kind of a modes, we all know by now, these modes are available to us. Communication by registered post, communication by written acknowledgement, where the acknowledgement will be there, written letter with an acknowledgement. Now these two were there. New thing which has been introduced is an email communication. Now, acknowledgement of communication, just read this line. Now, लोगों को लगता है कि ईमेल कम्युनिकेशन अलाउ हो गया तो कुछ प्रॉब्लम नहीं, कम्युनिकेट करो ईमेल में, खत्म हो गई बात. It is not like that. It is an acknowledgement of communication is a proper communication. So the earlier auditor has to acknowledge that yes, I have received this email. Then only it's in a final communication. Otherwise, it will not be a proper communication at all. Acknowledgement can be of any type. You may say noted, okay, I don't have any problem, go ahead, whatever kind of acknowledgement, right? But once it is acknowledged, then it's a proper communication. The fourth type of communication is a UDIN communication. For that, council has to issue guidelines, so I'm not discussing that. Friends, many people ask the issues whether the courier communication is allowed or not. Usko kuch problem nahi, to institute ko kya problem hai? It is not allowed means not allowed. We should not do a courier communication, right? The courier communication ke jo avenues hai, only that way communication can be done. Now, as far as government and bank audits, people say that they expect us to complete the audit in a 15 days time. Tab tak to communication aata hi nahi, kya kare? So relaxation has been given that you can give a conditional acceptance, right? On the basis of which you can go ahead, right? If the professional objections are raised by auditors subsequently, then there is an issue. So you must check what are the professional objections are raised subsequently by an auditor. To my mind, in the government and bank audits, there cannot be any professional objections by the earlier auditor. Now, there was a typical case here that in a bank audit, conditional acceptance was given, and subsequently the auditor raised an issue, earlier auditor raised an issue that I have been removed from this bank by this bank from the bank audit because I gave qualification like so and so, so and so, so and so. So you look into it. Now this chartered accountant got afraid. अरे क्या करे अभी, ये तो objection आ गया. Now friends, even if this objection is there, this is not an objection on the basis of which we cannot accept the audit. At the most, what we can do is, because remember, here the auditor was not removed because by the bank, because he has raised this from that branch, because he has raised this what is considered qualification. Because there's always a rotation in that bank. He may be removed from the bank's panel, but that is none of your lookout. From my branch, he was removed in a rotation manner. So he was not removed as an auditor just because he's raised a qualification from the audit of that branch. So to my mind, for that person, he can accept an audit, he can conduct an audit also of that branch is concerned. Correct? For auditor, of course, there's a different way of earlier auditor, there's a different way of going against that bank in the institute, if at all he wants to go. That's a very difficult thing. Now, what is an objective under this in this communication? Basic objective is to safeguard. If I am appointed as a new auditor, I must safeguard myself. कि कुछ है क्या इसमें जो मुझे जानना चाहिए पहले ऑडिटर से. So that is a safeguard. One must do that with safeguards of us in a mind. Now, very importantly, duty has been casted on the previous auditor now that he has to respond also. But उसने अगर respond करना है तो हमको भी गला बराबर से लिखना पड़ेगा. Whether you have any professional objection or not, that is not the only thing one has to write. One has to also write whether there is any information which you would like us to keep in mind while conducting an audit. If we write a letter like this, there's a duty casted upon the earlier auditor to respond to you. If he is not doing that, now it's a professional misconduct also, right? It's a breach of code of ethics also. Our ethics demand that the previous auditor also has to respond now, correct? If such information is asked, you may say that I don't have any information to bring to your notice, but you must say that. Now, very importantly, friends, there's a council guideline which says that if an earlier year's undisputed fee of a chartered accountant for carrying a statutory audit, either in the Companies Act or any other act, has not been paid, the new auditor shall not accept an appointment. Shall not accept. So there is no question in this whether I can take a NOC or not. Shall not accept. This is not applicable to sick unit. Sick unit means what? It is given there. It is an accumulated losses or exceeding the profits in any of the year. Now, shall not. Statutory audit fees is not paid of the last year, then he shall not accept. Now, you will say that इसमें communication में तो कहा नहीं है, it's a council guideline, but if a council guideline is violated, right, then it's a misconduct. Then one has to therefore get assured. So unless there's a concrete proof available of the payment of the undisputed fees, the new auditor shall not accept the audit. Now, there are so many issues which are arising out of it. What is undisputed fee? Now, undisputed fee is a fee which is being provided in the books of accounts signed by auditor and auditee both. Now, what are the issues? Whether this clause is applicable to other audits also, right? One-time audits also. Yes, it is applicable to all the audits as I mentioned, right? Whether the fees is pending, internal audit fees is pending, whether I can take an internal audit or not. Yes, I can take an internal audit because that council guideline is applicable to the statutory audit. It is not applicable to other than statutory audit. So if an internal audit is pending, I am supposed to communicate with the earlier auditor. But after communication, if the acknowledged communication, if there is no response coming within the reasonable time, I can go ahead with my work, no problem at all. So practically, what is the process here? That even I'm appointed as an auditor, if it's a statutory auditor, I must see whether there is enough fees, earlier years outstanding fees is there, undisputed fees outstanding. If it is outstanding, then I shall not accept. There's no question. If it is not outstanding, or if there is any appointment for other than statutory audit, I must communicate with the earlier auditor and wait for reasonable time. It is said that reasonable time is a 15 days time. And after that, I can go ahead with that. If he's no, it should be acknowledged communication, of course. And if he is not responding, I can still go ahead with my work. Now, the another issue, if previous auditor fees is pending because of the non-availability, abroad hai, COP surrender kiya hua hai, right? Then he is not available. इसकी वजह से पैसा pending है. Client बहुत बार ऐसा आपको बोलेगा. Now, in that case, in the code of ethics, only one measure has been suggested, that ask the client to take out a demand draft, take an affidavit. That is why I am suggesting that I have taken this demand draft, and whenever this I find, I will pay this, right? And you can go ahead with this if it is not traceable. But please see the genuinity of the client's contention that he is not traceable, right? You know, institute has the addresses, institute can do it, right? The client also can communicate on the client on the chartered accountant's address and find out. Now, interestingly, one question was raised: if an auditee is having a cash basis of system, how can I see that whether there's no provision in the books of account? How can I see that the previous year fee has been paid or not? Now, that's a challenge before us. Now, undisputed fee, one has to find out. Audit to hua hai, humko malum hai. Now, whether there is a subsequent payment has been done or not, whether the pay, and we can communicate with the earlier chartered accountant also in this case, whether your fees has been paid or not, right? But please see to it that the fees has been paid, statutory audit has been paid, and then only go ahead with this. This is somewhere, this is also a question I have raised to Ethical Standard Board. If the cash system is there, then how the chartered accountant has to satisfy himself. Now, it is said that undisputed fees. Now, undisputed fees means what? If the client says that there's any dispute, मेरा तो dispute चालू है CA के साथ, हमने काम लेना चाहिए नहीं लेना चाहिए. We must get a proper proof of the dispute. Dispute does not mean one single email saying that I am not agreeable to the fees which is raised by you. Dispute does not say. Engagement letter, appointment letter में अगर fees prescribed है, then merely because a mail has been sent, it doesn't become a disputed fee, right? So that one has to be take care. What happens if this audit has been done by the other professional? Cost accountants were allowed to do the GST audit. Earlier GST audit has been done by cost accountant. Now अभी हमारे पास आ गया, तो हमने communicate करना चाहिए क्या? Now, there is no compulsion as such, but the code says that it is a desirable practice to communicate with them. There is no question of NOC. So, desirable practice to communicate. If the previous auditor has resigned, बहुत बार लोगों को लगता है कि previous auditor तो resign किया, अभी communicate करने की क्या जरूरत है? या COP surrender किया है, communicate करने की क्या जरूरत है? See, the clause says that the chartered accountant, right? कैसे बाहर गया है, whether COP surrender किया है, that is not relevant. So it is our duty to communicate with them. And as I said, communication is relevant for us. It is in our interest, incoming auditor's interest. So उसने resign किया नहीं किया हमको मालूम नहीं है, right? So we have to communicate. Going further, friends, charging of the fees, percentage basis, whether I can, or contingencies, whether I am allowed to charge. Contingency means मुझे appointment किया गया auditors करके पेंडेमिक के बाद, एंड प्रीवियस ईयर में सेल कम है, तो अभी अगर सेल, मैं बोलता हूँ कि सेल ज्यादा हुआ तो क्या, तो ठीक है, कंपनी बोलती है कि आगे जाके अगर सेल ज्यादा हुआ तो हम आपके फी बढ़ा देंगे. Now that kind of an appointment or that kind of an fees we cannot take. It should be decided in advance with an appointment. So please, take care that fees has been discussed earlier, and the fees is not on the percentage basis and on the basis of contingencies. Now, there are certain exceptions in the regulation 192. I'm not going in detail of that, but audit of cooperative societies, etc., have been discussed. Fundraising activities also have been discussed. Insolvency professional also given an exception, and non-assurance services to non-audit clients also has been given an exception. Non-assurance services. So all non-assurance services to non-audit client. If I'm not at all auditing that client and only doing a non-assurance services for that client, there's an exception. So I can charge the fees on percentage basis or on the basis of the contingencies. Very interesting issue was raised to me in one session, that especially regarding certain kind of an activities, that the engagement letter contain that ठीक है कंपनी के अगर इतना सेल बढ़ गया तो हम आपको ज्यादा देंगे fees, but ultimate fee was taken, a fixed fee was taken. Ultimately, that on that basis the fee was not taken, percentage basis the fee was not taken. But friends, this clause says that one should not agree also to take the fee like that. So even an engagement letter saying that this kind of a thing, and we are accepting that, that is also not correct. That is also against our ethics. Now, going further, percentage basis fees, as I said, we cannot take. Going further regarding the independence or substantial interest. Now, if a chartered accountant is having a substantial interest or not having independence, one should not certify the financial statements. Now, substantial interest, or it has been explained here. I'm not going in detail of that. It is self-explanatory. As far as companies are concerned, we have to see the Companies Act provision. As far as tax audits are concerned, we have to see the Income Tax Act provisions also. But otherwise, for non-corporate entities, I mean, 20% or more profits, if we are entitled by ourselves, by relatives, by partners, then we are substantially having interest in that. So if such interest is there, then we must not conduct the audit of that entity. As far as companies are concerned, as I said, section 141(3), right? If you have a relationship, if you have a conflict of interest, if you have a business relationship, right? We have to see those provisions. This is not a company law lecture, so I'm not going in detail of that. But there many issues arise because of this. Going further, friends, as far as independence is concerned, certain provisions from guidance note are important. Guidance note on independence of auditors. In case of an appointment done by RBI or CNAG, right? We should not accept any other appointment from the auditee after the completion of 1 year of the audit assignment. Sorry, I mean up to the completion of 1 year of the audit assignment. So if I'm appointed a statutory audit of a CNAG of a company, 4-4 साल की appointment है, और statutory audit होने के बाद 5वें साल में मैंने internal audit नहीं लेना है. RBI, of course, now RBI also has come up with the circular only that recently, that after the completion of a statutory audit or before being appointed as a statutory auditor, 1 साल तक हम लोग कुछ internal assignment नहीं ले सकते हैं बैंक में, right? So that is there. There is one more interesting provision which perhaps many of us not know, that there is a council guideline. If we are appointed as a statutory auditor of a PSU or a company having more turnover more than 50 crores, then our fees from non-audit services should not be more than our audit fees. Now, it's very interesting thing, and we may be facing these circumstances. Please see that our non-audit fees is not more than that. Now, certain additional thing, we know that internal auditor cannot become GST auditor and statutory auditor cannot do the accounting simultaneously. One important thing has been pronounced recently, that cooling off period, if I am a director in a company and I resign or I cease to be a director in that company, I cannot take a statutory audit of that company for 2 years. So after 2 years, I can start the statutory audit of that company. Now, friends, certain issues are there. I mean, typically volume 1, we never look into it, but in volume 1, paragraph 400.30 and 900.30, R means it is compulsory on us, right? What does it say? That when the independence has to be tested, so independence shall hai, maintained through during both engagement period and period covered by the financial statements. Means what? If I am appointed as a statutory auditor of a company, say in the month of July 21 or August 21, right, and the AGM for the financial year 21-22, right? So period covered by financial statement is 21-22. So I am appointed in the month of July, but my independence will start from 1st April 21. Correct? Secondly, engagement period gets over when I'm signing the balance sheet. So suppose I'm signing the balance sheet on say 31st of July 22. So typically my independence should be tested from 1st April 21 to 31st of July 22. That is very relevant provision. I think we must check. Now, if an audit of the firm in which the relative is employed, another issue, whether I should take an audit or not. Now, if a relative is a key managerial person or the person, depending upon the how many employees are there in that firm, it is very relevant, friends. If there are very few employees and one of the key employees is our relative, we must not take an audit. But if it's a large multinational, one of the person is my relative, then one can take a view on the basis of the independence standards. Now, independence standards have been newly pronounced and these are there in the volume 1. Now, those independence standards are applicable for statutory as well as internal audit. So we must take care of that. Going further, preparation of certificates and reports. Now, one says that I cannot prepare a certificate for, I can fix my signature on a certificate on a contingent earning, on an estimate of earning contingent upon future transaction. Typically, a project report cannot be signed by a chartered accountant. Now, client comes to us saying that I want a signature. Bank is asking from the signature of a chartered accountant on the project report. So please sign it. So we also sign as per the information and explanation. Please, we are not allowed to sign the project report. But then what happened? Clients comes to us, then what we'll do? There is a standards on assurance engagement on examination of prospective financial information. We can prepare our report or prepare our certificate on the basis of this standard. Now we can have a separate session also for the reports and certificates of not necessarily by me but anybody else also. But there are many issues regarding certificates and reports. Whether we can certify ITR copies, how to give net worth certificate and turnover certificates, etc. There are these standards which are given, standards on assurance engagement, on standards on review engagements are there. Right? There is also a guidance note on certificates and reports for specific purposes. Now, on the basis of that, the report should be given. Now, as far as the project report is concerned, I cannot sign a project report, but I can sign, definitely I can mention that I can certify the what you can say that projections or the assumptions which have been made. So I can prepare a certificate, and in that standards on assurance engagement, the format is also given, which says that the assumptions I have checked, the assumptions are reasonable, and the computation is as per the assumptions. These things I can certify, right? And I can give that certificate. Banks are accepting it. Don't worry about it. As far as ITR copies are concerned, we can prepare a separate certificate. We should not sign the ITR copies, but we can prepare a separate certificate saying that how I have verified this. If you want, I can share the format also later, right? But these copies should not be signed as such, but the proper certificate should be prepared as per that guidance note for certificates and reports as per the for the specific purposes. Now, net worth certificate, I have taken this issue is just recently, yesterday or day before yesterday, I saw the news that a chartered accountant has been held in a court guilty for issuing a net worth certificate. Now, net worth certificate, how we have to issue? And I think there was some issue also raised on this our CA WhatsApp group, that whether I can take a certificate regarding the market value of the property and I issue a net worth certificate. Now, friends, we are issuing a certificate. I will just read out what is certificate. Now, certificate, the guidance note on audit reports for special purposes. The certificate is a written confirmation of accuracy of the facts stated therein and does not involve estimate or opinion. So I am giving a confirmation in the certificate. Now, when I'm giving a certificate, I must be 100% sure about it. So net worth certificate, when one is giving, one should properly give as per the proof available on hand. Turnover certificate, a very interesting case I'll tell you regarding turnover certificate. So take a proper engagement letter. There was a person doing a doing a construction activity, contracting activity, and also was having a grocery shop in a proprietary firm. Now, turnover certificate was demanded by PWD or something of that sort for a construction, giving a contracts. And this person came to a chartered accountant saying that I want a turnover certificate. Now, chartered accountant, without asking the purpose for which the turnover certificate is required, issued the total turnover certificate. Right now, friends, actually speaking, the turnover certificate was required for giving a contract, and he issued a turnover certificate wherein the contracting activity as well as the grocery shop turnover was included. Now, that authority filed a case against this chartered accountant saying that you are in collusion with the client. Fortunately for this chartered accountant, he has taken an engagement letter. In that, it was very clearly mentioned, I want a total turnover. Now, for what purpose he wants, that he had not taken. Now, that guidance note on certificate for special purposes mentions in that pro forma certificate that the purpose should be mentioned in that certificate. And that was not mentioned, although the engagement letter was mentioning that. So that case, unfortunately, is a very tricky case for that person. Now, there are many things regarding certificates. There was one case where the utilization certificate was asked by the bank. Now, that bank was asked for utilization certificate for purchase of asset. Now, the chartered accountant gave the certificate on the basis of invoice. Unfortunately, in the certificate, on what basis he is giving the certificate, that was not mentioned. The bank expected that the chartered accountant would physically visit and give the certificate. Unfortunately, it was not given, right? So one has to be very clear. There was one more case which was there. I mean, I'm having a lot of cases in front of me. There was a charge satisfaction certificate required in form number 17. Now, the chartered accountant gave the charge satisfaction certificate on the basis of some Xerox copies. Now, those Xerox copies of the bank were forged Xerox copies. So always insist, whenever you are giving a certificate, always insist the original of any of the supportings which we are giving. Right now, all these things went against this chartered accountant. These are three different cases I have cited. While giving a certificate, one has to be utmost careful in this. Now, one more case is there. When the certificate was asked by the income tax department regarding the share capital, and he gave the certificate, and actually there was not issued, share capital was not issued, right? Shares were not issued, money was not received, the balance sheet was saying that, the trial balance was saying that share capital is issued. So please, friends, one has to be very careful regarding issuing these kind of a certificates. Going further, auditing the financial statements and reporting on that, similar kind of a thing. There are various clauses which are involved. Submitting a report without verification of financial statement. I think I have mentioned the case also in the last session, also in this. Now, whenever we submit a report, whenever we sign any financial statement, we are supposed to verify it. Now, the examination of without examination of financial statement, this report cannot be given. Failure to disclose material fact, failure to disclose material misstatements, failure to obtain sufficient information. I can give you the cases on this. Now, there was one case regarding a audit of a company in which there was a substantial loan which was outstanding. On the last day, a substantial amount came in the that bank account. The company classified it as a loan from others. Chartered accountant also signed it. Subsequently, it was observed there was some asset reconstruction company which had taken over this loan. Now that asset reconstruction company filed a case against this chartered accountant, saying that you had not pointed out our name here. You have not mentioned our name. Now this chartered accountant took a plea that I have taken it. I mean, they have mentioned it at other loans from others. They have not mentioned it mentioned under category of loan only. But we all know, as far as company is concerned, we have to mention the details of loan, which was not mentioned. Secondly, the chartered accountant took a plea that हमने तो उनको पूछा था, but they have not told us. Now, friends, typically when we write report, we mention that as per the information and explanation given. If you have not received the information, how can we say that as per the information explanation? We have to qualify it. So qualification was not there in that report. And so one cannot take a shelter key I had asked, but they have not given. Naturally, one will not have a proof that I had asked, but they have not given. So one has to be very careful in this. Material misstatement. I think that this case also I had mentioned last time, but it's a very, very eye-opener case. Now, what happened was, it was a construction company doing one or two construction in a year, not a major company, major construction company as such. Now, what happened is in a 1 year, there was no construction activity. So whatever surplus they were having, they deposited or they, purchased the shares or mutual fund. They invested it in that. So in the next year, there was no construction activity and only dividend income was there. Company was not having any fixed assets, right? They were doing a contracting only. So in that next year, they were having a major asset as a investment in shares and mutual fund and major income as dividend from these mutual funds and shares. What happened was, auditor also signed saying unko kuch problem laga hi nahi hai, no problem. Many of us may be knowing that RBI, as per the RBI provisions, if more than 50% of the income is financial income and more 50% assets are financial asset, that company becomes NBFC. And if that is satisfying that condition, it is an NBFC and it has to take a registration from RBI. And if it fails to take registration, it's a duty of an auditor to point it out to the Reserve Bank of India that they have not taken a registration. And if we don't do that, we are guilty of misconduct. So it's a major fact which is not disclosed, major material misstatement which is not disclosed, right? Now, in this case, what happened was the chartered accountant was not knowing at all that this is a company and this has become NBFC. Construction company NBFC ho sakti hai kya? But hui hai isme. And he was held guilty. There are many such cases. There was one more case where what happened was, partnership firm was there. Now in that partnership firm, one partner retired and a new partner was admitted. He took over what you can say, the asset, the capital balance of the old partner. And he said that I will pay off him. Their agreement consisted was that he will take over a residential flat of the incoming partner. The old partner will take over that flat in a satisfaction of his claim, and anything which is remaining will be paid to him separately by him. Now, friends, that was a supporting document. Say, for example, the capital balance was 40 lakhs rupees, and this, new partner's asset was taken over by him. Now, everybody was knowing, we were sitting on disciplinary bench, we were also knowing that flat at such and such place can have a market value more than 40 lakhs rupees. So auditor relied on that. See, the market value is more than 40 lakhs rupees, no problem. इस पार्टनर ने भी पहले कुछ इशू नहीं रेज किया, बाद में कुछ इशू रेज नहीं किया था तब तक. So he signed the balance sheet also, saying that his capital account was completely wiped off from the balance sheet and it was transferred in the name of a new partner. He checked the agreement between these two that his residential flat was taken over. Subsequently, there was some dispute and this outgoing partner started taking a plea that I have not got my full dues. My capital balance was 40 lakhs this flat, what you can say, the stamp duty valuation of this flat is only 25 lakhs. So 15 lakhs rupees are still due to me. It has not been reported by this chartered accountant. And my balance was wiped off from the balance sheet. How it can be done? So it is necessary to take a sufficient information. We must be satisfied that this information is sufficient. उनका कुछ अंडरस्टैंडिंग रहेगा 40 लाख की मार्केट वैल्यू, बट रिकॉर्ड पे किधर है 40 लाख की मार्केट वैल्यू? Record pay only 25 lakhs is a stamp duty valuation, or a consideration was 23 lakhs or something of that sort. So record says different, and therefore it must be confirmed information with us. If we are not able to obtain that information, we are guilty. We cannot say कि we have got the information but मिला ही नहीं है. We are guilty of that. If we have not got the information, we should have qualified that. In one case, it so happened that there was a substantial contingent liability in terms of tax demand, and that was not disclosed in the books of account by way of notes to accounts. Now that was a partnership firm. The chartered accountant took a plea. ये company के लिए ठीक है. Now this is utter lack of knowledge, friends. That accounting standards are not applicable to the non-corporate entities. It is an utter lack of knowledge. So significant disclosure of significant accounting policies and disclosure of contingent liability must be there. And I mean, this chartered accountant could not take a plea that he was not knowing also, because he was only a tax consultant for that, which we are allowed. We have seen just now. So non-disclosure of a contingent liability, the case was filed by bankers against the chartered accountant, because the contingent liability was not disclosed in the earlier balance sheets. And then when the demand came, their loan was completely in danger. And that's why, as a chartered accountant, we must look into all these things. Perhaps lack of knowledge, or perhaps lack of, complete ignorance, or trying to be completely casual in terms of helping the clients. So let's not do that. Let's go further. What is the next issue? Next issue is disclosure, confidentiality, or disclosure of information relating to client or client's asset, custody of client's asset or money. Very interesting cases in this. Now, our code says that we cannot disclose the information which we have gathered regarding client. It's a confidential information with us during our professional engagement. Please mind you, here it is not mentioned audit, professional engagement. Even if I am a tax consultant, professional engagement. We cannot disclose that information to any person unless I have taken a permission from that client, or it is being stipulated under any act or any section it is being demanded from me. So if I'm not getting that information, if I'm not permitted by client or by law, I should not disclose this information. Now, there are many issues in this case. One can see a lot of issues arise, and a lot of cases also arise out of this. Can an auditor share information in court of law to defend any case? Suppose a case is filed against an auditor only for negligence. Can he disclose the information of client in court? Now, friends, he has to take permission. He cannot unilaterally disclose the confidential information. Yes, he can disclose about his working papers. He can disclose about the procedure he has done. But to defend him, he cannot just disclose the information which is there with the client's confidential information. Now, in case of companies, whom should he take a consent from? From a director, from two directors, from a board of directors? What? Now, here one must check again the of the company, whether it has been passed in board or not. Please see to it. In case of a non-corporate also, in case of a trust, etc. also, if you have to disclose the information by law, right, or to anybody, consent has to be taken. So whose consent? Properly authorized person hai ki nahi hai? Now, there are duty of the CA in frauds and suppression by the client. Now, what can be a duty of the CA? It is very nicely discussed in a volume 1, in a code of ethics in volume 2. Now, duty can be for fraud and separation. किसी कोई आपसे information मांगता है, क्या करेंगे आप? We should not disclose unless it has been asked under the Indian Evidence Act properly under a letter. Just because, I mean, one chartered accountant asked me that police is asking regarding such and such information for a money laundering case of his client. I've told him, request the police station or police, concerned police, to write a one-line letter to you under such and such act is required by us. Oral information ke upar mat jana, please, even if it's a police. I know it's a very tricky situation, right? But we have to see this clause. I can give you a couple of cases here. One chartered accountant was processing a bank loan and he was in a hurry to give a good service to his client. So bank asked him that where are the stocks situated in a which godowns, where are the locations of the godown. So in a good faith, he mentioned the godowns directly to the bank. Subsequently, he came to know that client did not want to disclose one of his godown, and client filed a case against him. Why you have disclosed my godown? See, institute does not see client कैसा है, साधु है या संत है या डाकू है. Ultimately, our code decides our behavior. So we should have acted diligently, taken a permission of a client and given it to the bankers. Many times in an income tax cases also, हमारे पास तो authority letter रहता है कि he has allowed to give papers relating to the case and all so and so forth. But have we taken a permission from him to submit? Now, how we can defend ourselves that there is no, we have not permitted. हम client की direct information, no, we go in many times in the step in the shoes of the client. Directly information निकालते हैं, directly submit कर देते हैं income tax department को. Of course, now in e-assessment, the case is completely different. Better to get a signature of a client on that and submit it, even if we have a power of attorney. There was a very second case, always Vajay sir always tells this, that a chartered accountant was having an entire family's files, income tax files. And one fine day, the daughter-in-law in that family came and asked for the copies of the income tax return of the family, saying that we want it for some visa purpose and so on and so forth. And this chartered accountant was knowing the family, so he also in good faith gave the entire income tax records. Subsequently, it was found that this was required for a dowry, I mean, for an alimony case in a divorce case, for an alimony in a divorce case. And this father-in-law and the husband of that lady got wild on that chartered accountant. Why you gave the income tax papers to her? You have shared the confidential information. बहुत सालों से पूरी family की file थी इनके पास. But still, when the problem occurs, chartered accountant is always on fire. So we have to, no, I mean, problem कुछ नहीं है, हमको खाली documentation बराबर से लेना है. We have to be very diligent in our work. So in case of fraud or separation, अगर fraud पहले हुआ है, तो हमारी responsibilities कम है. If frauds are happening during the conduct of the audit or professional work, then we are not supposed to disclose it to the police officers, but certainly whether we can carry out that work or not, we have to come out of that work. If we complete the work knowing that there is a fraud, then there's an issue. If the fraud is subsequently detected and we have found that subsequently there is a fraud, we should immediately inform the regulators that our report is unreliable because we have found certain incriminating things subsequently. We need not disclose it, right? But if we don't take these steps, we will be treated as doing a collusion with them. Of course, embezzlement definitely again not as per our ethics. Now, friends, very important another clause is the client's custody of client's assets and money. Now, this clause is very interesting clause. It says that because one case which I am going to tell you is very important in this and very eye-opener in this. A chartered accountant shall keep the monies of his client other than the remuneration or money meant for the expended in a separate banking account and spend it within the reasonable time, right? Spend the money within the reasonable time for which it is intended. So money received for expenses to be incurred, not intended to be spent in a short span of time, whether it is to be deposited in a separate account, yes, It has to be deposited in a separate account. If the advance fees is received, then it's a fees which is received. Then it need not be deposited in a separate bank account. Use of digital signature, I'll explain it later on. I'll come to that later on, these issues. But I'll give you one very interesting case which I always give, and we have pronounced a judgment in this, our bench, when I was on a disciplinary committee. And we were also quite stunned to see this case. See why we should not step into the shoes of client, and why we should not compromise our principles for client. On say first week of September, there was a huge money received in a separate account kept by chartered accountant for payment of advance tax. Advance tax was to be paid on 15th. As we all know, it is to pay on 15th September. This chartered accountant also paid advance tax for a client from that separate account on 14th of September. No problem. Actually speaking, no problem. There was no problem at all till there was a dispute between client and the chartered accountant. And then the client filed a case against this chartered accountant just for the additional evidence in a court of law that how this person is cheating me. And in that, he charged the chartered accountant saying that you have used my money. You have not spent it within the reasonable time. I have given you in the 1st of September this amount. Now, chartered accountant took a plea कि मैंने तो advance tax भर दिया ना time में. Normally, we have habit of doing a work towards the end, towards the deadlines. Now, that person, that client took a plea, took a charge that you have used my money for 13 days. रीजनेबल टाइम में आपने नहीं भरा है वो. इसने कहा कि आपने 1 सितंबर को नहीं या 2 सितंबर को भरा तो वो एडवांस टैक्स नहीं. Now, unfortunately, we even asked for a, we wanted somehow to help our friend because we were knowing that this this was no vengeance, unnecessarily vendetta was taken by this person. So we asked for a bank account statement. Unfortunately, in that bank account, there were transactions. Although there was a balance line, there were a transaction. First in, first out basis. One could conclude that this money was used and not used in the reason, used for its personal for other purpose and not used within the reasonable time. So friends, we have to be very careful. बहुत बार ऐसा होता है कि सेल्फ असेसमेंट टैक्स के लिए क्लाइंट से पैसा आता है सितंबर या व्हाटएवर एंड में रिटर्न फाइल करना है तब, एंड क्लाइंट बोलता है आप इसमें से भर दो. Say for example, lakh of rupees is received, 64,000 is a self assessment tax. हमने भर दिया 36,000. क्लाइंट बोलता है आपके पास रख दो ना, क्या फर्क पड़ता है, बाद में देखेंगे क्या करना है. Please take it in writing from the client, right? Otherwise, it will be boomeranging on us subsequently, right? Let us not trust. Let us take everything in writing from the client. Otherwise, return that money immediately to the client. 36,000 अपने को लगता है अच्छा है करके, but then it will be a problem. Correct. Coming back to a very critical issue of digital signatures. We have seen the administrative services friend. Administrative services say that we can prepare a statutory forms for the approval of the clients, and after the approval we can upload it, right? So approval of the client is very important. It is not preparing filing the member, it is the client who is filing the return. So digital signature is an asset of the client. If we are using it, it has to be, and we are keeping it, there has to be a proper record of it. First, it should be kept in our office on record. It's been recorded, so I'm not going in detail of that. We must have a proper record with us saying that when this digital signature was received, when the client informed me to put this signature. So what I'm is I'm only uploading as instructed by client, putting his digital signature as per his instruction. Always it is better to get an email from a client or a letter from a client saying that I am sending my person with a digital signature, right? And I'm approving the return which were prepared from your office. Kindly facilitate my person to upload my return from your office with this digital signature. As I said, we must get it in writing from the client. I'm not elaborating on this, but digital signature हमारे पास पड़ी है बहुत दिनों से. That should not be there on record. when we are exchanging an email or any kind of a communication from the client. Client बोलता है कि हम आपको digital signature भेज रहे हैं, हम भी बोलते हैं ठीक है, I am using it. Now this kind of a record should not be there. There was a case in front of our bench only where client flatly denied, saying that ये मैंने return file करने को कहा ही नहीं था, मुझे नहीं मालूम इन्होंने क्या फाइल किया है. There was a criminal case filed against the client saying, in some case, I'm not going in detail of that, and client said कि ये मेरा रिटर्न है ही नहीं, मेरी डिजिटल सिग्नेचर तो सीए के पास पड़ी है, देखो मेरे पास मेल है और उन्होंने भी एक्नॉलेज किया हुआ है, तो उन्होंने क्या किया मुझे नहीं मालूम है. आई एम नॉट एसोसिएटेड विद दैट. So friends, digital signature is a very, very difficult thing to be handled, and critical thing, not difficult, and we have to handle it with complete diligence, complete record on our hand. Now this is regarding clients digital signature. बहुत इसमें बहुत डिटेल में जा सकते हैं हम, क्या क्या कर सकते हैं. There are a lot of cases which have happened. बहुत बार ऐसा लगता है ना कि there was one case where the directors, new directors were appointed in a company. Now new directors were appointed in a company with a digital signature of a chartered accountant. Now this chartered accountant, he was a very young chartered accountant, was not knowing also. वो बोलता कि ठीक है ना, उन्होंने उसने प्ली किया, डायरेक्टर ही अपॉइंट किया ना, रिमूव नहीं किया ना उनको. बट फ्रेंड, इन दैट कंपनी देयर वाज अ लॉसेस, and earlier directors went off and new directors were appointed. They were not knowing also, those who were appointed, that we have been appointed here. It was on completely forged letters they were appointed, and these chartered accountants digital signatures were used. So not only clients digital signature, but हमारे digital signature का भी use बहुत important है. Now we feel, I'll give you one more case here, which is a very interesting case. In an income tax raid, there were 3 balance sheets which were found. One which was given to bankers, one which was filed with income tax, one which was filed in ROC. Now, chartered accountant was also asked. Fortunately for chartered accountant, the client gave the affidavit saying that income tax में जो फाइल की हुई है वो ओरिजिनल है, वही साइन किया हुआ है चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट ने, बाकी 2 तो मैंने फोर्ज किए सिग्नेचर. Correct? Normally speaking, friends, this kind of an affidavit should relieve chartered accountant from his duty. But यहाँ पे डिसिप्लिनरी कमेटी ने प्ली क्या लिया, I'll tell you, इसमें और एक डेवलपमेंट हुआ बाद में. डिसिप्लिनरी ने प्ली क्या लिया कि client might have done it, given this affidavit for protecting the chartered accountant. If chartered accountant came to know that कि रेड में 3 बैलेंस शीट मिले हैं और उसने उसकी 2 सिग्नेचर फोर्ज हुई है, why he has not filed FIR or why he has not informed institute, right? अभी ये केसेस नहीं होंगे because यूडीन आया है अभी, but he should have informed the institute. But in this case, affidavit देके भी फायदा नहीं हुआ. क्यों? This subsequently it was found that this balance sheets were uploaded, XBRL balance sheets were uploaded on the ROC website with the digital signature of client. तो फिर भी 2 बैलेंस शीट हो गई ना, इनकम टैक्स एंड कंपनी लॉ. So plea or affidavit of a client that the income tax balance sheet is correct and other 2 are forged went in vain because the digital signature was affixed to the ROC balance sheet also. Now this chartered accountant, informally later on when we discussed, after holding him guilty, informally when we discussed, we came to know that जैसे कि बैलेंस शीट हो गई, टैक्स ऑडिट हो गया, तो हमको लगता है हमारा काम हो गया, राइट? ही वेंट ऑन, उसने कहा कि मुझे जाना था, बाहर गांव जाना था घूमने के लिए, मेरे टिकट्स बुक थे, तो इनको जो फाइलिंग करना था उसके लिए मैंने मेरी डिजिटल सिग्नेचर दी थी. नाउ इन दैट wrong balance sheets were uploaded, although the signatures on the original one might have been forged, but his digital signature was used in the ROC website and he was held guilty of misconduct in that. So digital signature is a multi-edged sword, one can say, not 2-edged sword, multi-edged sword, one can say, and one has to be very careful regarding this. Now, whether a chartered accountant can keep a lien on books of documents or records or assets of a client in lieu of his fees, there is a council decision or ethical standard board decision that such lien cannot be kept. मेरा पैसा नहीं देता ना, मैं आपको बुक्स ही नहीं दूंगा या एसेट ही नहीं दूंगा. So that kind of a thing cannot be done. Now, friends, next items are regarding the solicitations, and this is quite lengthy, but I will just rush through this and purposefully kept at the end because so many things we know now regarding solicitations, but still, आसावाजी एक 10-15 मिनट एक्सटेंड हुआ तो चलेगा ना?
Yes, yes. 10 minute आप कर लो.
Yeah. Now,
because there are number of questions also.
Oh my God. Okay. तो सॉलिसिटेशन के भी क्वेश्चन बहुत हो सकते हैं. इस सॉलिसिटेशन के ऊपर मेरा 1 घंटे का सेशन हुआ है EARC में स्पेसिफिकली. Now, there are important things in that we cannot secure the business. So I'll directly go to the clause 6 of this first schedule, which says that chartered accountant in practice will be guilty if he is securing the professional work, soliciting the professional work directly or indirectly by circular, advertisement, or communication or interview, or means which are not available to us. Directly or indirectly, एक केस आपको खाली देता हूँ. चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट ने अकाउंट ऑफिस इनॉग्रेशन के लिए किसी महान व्यक्ति को बुलाया था. उन्होंने ऑफिस इनॉग्रेशन कर दिया और कुछ भाषण दे दिया. नेक्स्ट डे उन्होंने प्रिंट किया एडवर्टोरियल कॉलम में. नाउ subsequent day when it was printed in advertorial column, another chartered accountant filed case against him saying that you are advertising it because वो भाषण में बहुत अच्छी चीजें की थी कि ये बड़ा है, he is very intelligent, he is very expert, तो आप इसके पास आ जाओ, so on and so forth. Now this chartered accountant took a plea that कि मैंने तो कुछ कहा नहीं है, ये तो उन्होंने कहा हुआ है, but it was printed in an advertorial column, so it is an indirect advertisement. I gave you another example of indirect advertisement that coaching class के बैनर में CA का नाम प्रिंट हो गया है, practicing chartered accountant. बोलते मैंने तो किया नहीं, coaching class ने किया, but it's an indirect advertisement. You are soliciting the work through indirect advertisement. It is not allowed. Now, applying to another chartered accountant for work is allowed, but another chartered accountant तो WhatsApp group पे अगर हम डालेंगे कि मैं ये काम करना चाहता हूँ, that is not allowed. Young chartered accountant बहुत सारे रहेंगे, उनको मैं बता रहा हूँ. Applying to another chartered accountant in practice is allowed. Chartered accountants कहाँ नहीं है. So at a time एक को हम apply कर सकते हैं. Tender को हम apply कर सकते हैं क्या? कर सकते हैं. If the tender is for other than the work which is exclusively reserved for chartered accountant, there are tendering guidelines कि other than the work which is exclusively reserved for chartered accountant कौन से है? Internal audit है. बाकी कौन से भी रखो आप. Even tax, GST audit है. बैंक फाइनेंसिंग वर्क है, ड्यू डिलिजेंस वर्क है, ये सारे काम के लिए वी कैन अप्लाई फॉर टेंडर्स. बट इफ इट इज अ स्टैट्यूटरी ऑडिट वर्क टेंडर, देन वी कैन अप्लाई ओनली इफ द मिनिमम फीस इज प्रिस्क्राइब्ड इन दैट टेंडर. अदरवाइज वी कैन नॉट अप्लाई फॉर द टेंडर. नाउ इफ अ क्लाइंट इज पुटिंग अ कंडीशन कि खाली केवल चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट हैज टू अप्लाई फॉर द टेंडर, इट्स एन इंटरनल ऑडिट टेंडर एंड ओनली चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट शुड अप्लाई, then also we can go ahead and apply because this restriction has been put by the client, by the auditee, right? It is not statutory restriction, so that is not tendering guidelines are allowing us. Now press advertisement allowed hai kya humko? Press advertisements are allowed, friends, but not for solicitation, for giving a factual information regarding recruiting staff, own change in the office, celebrations of the silver jubilee, etc. And this should not lead to any kind of solicitation. So office change हो गया है तो उसका खाली एड्रेस चेंज का हमको एडवर्टाइजमेंट देना है, हम दे सकते हैं. But if you want to say that now we have shifted to a very big office, say 100,000 square feet, 50 workstations, you can come, there's a good conference hall. Now that kind of a thing we cannot give. So advertisements can be given, but only a factual information. Now, issue of greeting cards, etc., also is allowed, but only to the friends, clients, and relatives, right? Now, if you are seeing the screen, there are so many purple things because there are so many changes which have been allowed here. I am not going in detail of that. As I said, in interviews, in articles, in presentations, we are not allowed to solicit. We can mention our firm name or the fact that we are chartered accountant, but we are not allowed to mention the specialties or special cases or expertise, etc. And we cannot solicit the client from that. I can upload my videos, but I cannot say I can upload my educational videos, professional videos, but I cannot ask for a work from that. I cannot mention my firm name also in that, contact number also in that. But as far as internet or film, etc. is concerned, I can appear and I can mention my firm name, right? But not contact and exaggerated claim of my expertise should not be there on that. बहुत बार हमको इंक्वायरी आती है कि हम आपका थाने में सपोज रैंकिंग करना चाहते हैं फर्म की, आपकी फर्म की इंफॉर्मेशन दो. वी आर नॉट अलाउड टू शेयर द इंफॉर्मेशन फॉर सच काइंड ऑफ एन एक्सरसाइज ऑफ रैंकिंग ऑफ द फर्म एंड डिटेल्स ऑफ द फर्म, राइट? वी कैन नॉट शेयर दैट इंफॉर्मेशन. नाउ नेटवर्क, वेदर वी कैन बिकम अ मेंबर, अभी तो नाम भी ले सकते हैं बिकॉज नाउ इट हैज बिकम अ वेरी ओपन सीक्रेट. BNI network, जैसे see there are certain network which are not a networks of chartered accountant and which are formed for the sharing the professional work or sharing any kind of a work. So referral of work, if it is a medium of a referral of work, I cannot become a member of such network. CA network का member जरूर बन सकता हूँ मैं, correct? So I cannot become a member of such kind of a network. Now I cannot become a member of a aggregators network also. बहुत बार हमारे पास वेबसाइट से इंक्वायरी आती है, वेबसाइट पे हम हमारा नाम डालेंगे, आप फलाना पैसा दे दो, कुछ भी इंक्वायरी आपको आई तो आपको रेफर करेंगे. Please, we are not allowed to also be a member of an application-based service provider aggregator. Institute is thinking of doing such kind of a thing on the institute platform only now, right? So we cannot have solicit the work by way of doing such kind of a registration on these kind of a networks or aggregators. Then advertisement of professional achievement, हमारा कार्ड होता है, हमारी प्रोफेशनल स्टेशनरी होती है, on that we cannot advertise our professional achievements or other than the specified degrees. We cannot use any other designation. So on professional card, I can print, or stationery, I can print my degrees or diplomas by the institute, degrees of the CA Institute, degree of the recognized universities in India, degrees of the recognized institutions by the central government or our institute, and diplomas of the institute, not diplomas of any other body. Please remember, certificate course cannot be disclosed or cannot be printed on our stationery or any kind of a card or this thing. There are only 5 diplomas of the institute: the DISA, DIRM, Diploma in Insurance Risk Management; DMBA, Diploma in Management and Business Finance; I think Diploma in International Taxation; and Diploma in, I think, Trade Laws, World Trade Laws, right? Economic trade laws. So except for these 5, all other are certificate courses. Please don't write on your card certified forensic auditor. Please don't do it. And please don't print degrees which are not recognized by the institute. Somebody asked me whether CISA is recognized or not. According to me, CISA is not recognized by the institute, right? So whether it can be printed on card or not, you can put a specific query to Ethical Standard Board. I have also written to Ethical Standard Board. Going further, friends, there is one proviso. Write-up हम बना सकते हैं क्या फर्म का? बिल्कुल बना सकते हैं. We can prepare a write-up, but there are write-up guidelines, and that write-up guidelines have to be followed strictly. And if we follow these write-up guidelines, such write-up can even be printed in the newspaper. Times of India में भी आप print कर सकते हो write-up. So what are the printing? What are the write-up guidelines? Write-up guidelines are on your screen. Now, write-up guidelines says that when I'm giving an information, it should be honest and truthful. Exaggerated claims नहीं होने चाहिए. I can give the information of the services rendered, but I cannot give the information about the client. Somebody asked me whether industry दे सकता हूँ क्या? I think we can give services, audit of the banking industry or a banking sector. I can give that. We cannot make a unsubstantiated comparison or references. हमारी firm थाने में सबसे अच्छी है, थाना pioneer firm in थाने. No, it cannot be given in that. We cannot give information which will bring disrepute to the profession. हाल ही में एक मैटर रेफर हुआ है जिसमें एक एडवर्टीजमेंट में कहा गया था, उनको कहना कुछ था, लिखा कुछ था. I mean, they were consulting in this PMLA Act, Prevention of Money Laundering Act, and what is that, black money, I mean, that act. तो इसमें लिखा था, we consult in money laundering and black money, that kind of an activities. Now, service में लिखा था. So that is a bringing disrepute to the profession. So that should not be there. No testimonials or any kind of such achievements are allowed. Fees नहीं disclose कर सकते हम. कोई award मिला है, unless it is an award from ICI or a regulatory bodies or state or central government, that award also, थाने भूषण award किसी को मिला है, तो अपने firm के इसमें नहीं दे सकते हम. Monogram or catchwords work is worship, our firm is believing in honesty, something of that sort, nothing can be given. So it's a factual information which can be given in this write-ups, right? जैसे हमको कोई प्रोफाइल मांगते हैं फर्म का, तो हम देते हैं ना प्रोफाइल, so that should be containing as per these write-up guidelines. Font size should not be more than 14. फोटोग्राफ डाल सकते हैं, but passport size फोटो बार डालना है. So we can prepare that, and if you want, you can print a full page in Times of India also, right? No harm in that, but it is as per these guidelines, because this proviso is very clearly allowing us to circulate it in a print media by way of newspaper also. But the guidelines must be strictly followed. Naturally, it is just giving a factual information, no solicitation. Going back again, my cards, I cannot print designation. I can print a degree. Designation means what? Suppose I'm a company secretary. I can write FCS or ACS. I cannot write company secretary, because it's a chartered accountancy. Only designation can be put on my card. I cannot put anything else. My social achievements, president of any social club or Thane Hikers Club or Thane whatever club, or a member of a parliament or councillor. I cannot put a specialization, that is ITT lawyer or finance consultant. Two specializations are allowed now, that is insolvency professional and registered valuer. Except for these two, you cannot print any other thing on this. So third party platform, online third party platform also, we are not allowed to go. Sorry, we are allowed to go, but only for providing the consultation services and not any other services. And we cannot give on website these contact addresses and so on and so forth, cannot be given on these websites, right? So many people these days are invited by this kind of a website, so take care of that. Directory, many times we have discussed. Directory, we can have our name printed, but subject to a directory guideline. There should not be any special treatment to anybody. So there should be a proper directory, the proper section for chartered accountants in that, and a logical sequence must be there. At the end, I'm just concluding now, last couple of slides there. Since we have done this, seen this, what is that, profile or the write-up. Now, when we are giving the information in write-up, if we are making any mistake or writing any wrong things, it is also against our ethics and it will amount to misconduct. We had a case where यूपी जल निगम में कुछ टेंडर निकला था और बहुत सारे फर्म ने भरा था, and casually out of that, their यूपी जल निगम sent it for verification to the institute. Casually, just check करना, कुछ गिने चुने लेके उन्होंने भेज दिए, shortlist किए हुए. Unfortunately, in that one profile was prepared, and that tender, it was written that qualified assistants 2. Now, what do you mean by qualified assistant? Qualified means chartered accountants. If there are 2 chartered accountants with the firm which are employed, they have to be registered with the institute. If it is not registered with the institute, you are giving a wrong information. You are not supposed to hire a chartered accountant without registering with the institute, right? Normally, लोग क्या कहते हैं कि जनरली बनाते समय बड़ा चढ़ा के बनाते हैं, 2 लोग अगर असाइनमेंट में काम कर रहे हैं हमारे पास तो दे डालते हैं 2 people, right? Even article clerk, one has to write a proper article clerk, because this kind of a checking when it is done with the institute, it will create a problem for the firms. एक आपको और instance देता हूँ. When I became a secretary of WRC, when we went to a cooperative department. Now in cooperative department, we wanted to bring, that time there was a lot of transparency which we brought that time. But at that time, that Mr. Commissioner gave us a big list of a chartered accountant. I think some 400 chartered accountants from the Western region. They said that in chartered accountant ने different district registrar के पास apply किया है. अभी district registrar के पास apply कब कर सकते हैं, जब आपका office वो district में होगा तब. अगर आपका CA का office वो district में है, तो you can have a branch like that. He just asked the question to us. Now, people had applied in different districts without having branches registered with the institute. That you can't do it, right? So, while giving such information to or filing such tender, one should give a proper correct information. There are 2 slides which I am not going to discuss, because sharing of this slide which is in front of your screen, sharing of fees and receiving a share in fees. Because this is something which is assignment. If it is done with other professionals, we can allow to take a share in the fees of those people. But otherwise, we are not allowed to share the fees. आपको खाली एक इसमें केस बताता हूँ. अदर प्रोफेशनल के साथ हम फीस शेयर कर सकते हैं, बट अदर देन दोज प्रोफेशनल विच आर देयर, विच इज देयर इन फ्रंट ऑफ योर स्क्रीन, रेगुलेशन 53 एंड 53B, वी कैनॉट शेयर फीस विद अदर्स. आपको एक खाली केस बताता हूँ. एक यंग चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट, ही स्टार्टेड ऑफिस, ही गॉट अ टेबल स्पेस, और टेबल स्पेस लेने के समय उन्होंने एक एग्रीमेंट किया ओनर के साथ कि जब भी मेरा मतलब एनुअल, मैं अभी इतना आपको फिक्स दूंगा, जो भी 5,000 भाड़ा है फॉर एग्जांपल, और बाकी मेरा 10% जो मेरा हो जाएगा ना टर्नओवर, उसमें से मैं आपको 10% या 2% व्हाटएवर आई विल गिव इट टू यू. Now this, because he was not having money, genuinely he was not knowing anything, so he did agreement like that. Subsequently उस पर्सन को कुछ पैसा देने में कुछ डिस्प्यूट हो गया, और उस पर्सन ने इसके ऊपर फाइल किया केस कि आप फीस शेयर नहीं कर सकते, लेकिन आपने मेरे साथ फीस शेयर किया, which is not allowed to you, right? And for this young chartered accountant was trapped like this. And lastly, I'm taking this slide and I'm finishing. Very important friends, this ये disciplinary schedule के clauses है. Second schedule clause 7 and first schedule clause 2. ये दो screen के ऊपर है आपके. First and last clause I will take and then I will finish. Second schedule clause 7 says that a chartered accountant in practice will be guilty of misconduct if he does not exercise due diligence or is grossly negligent in conduct of his duty. This is not relating to audit. This is for all duties. Correct? Does not exercise due diligence or grossly negligent. Grossly negligent तो समझा जा सकता है, but does not exercise due diligence. इसमें सारी चीजें कवर हो जाती है friends. Now this clause, that's why I always call it as a mother clause. जितने भी डिसिप्लिनरी मैटर्स आते हैं ना, उसमें से 50% से ज्यादा मैटर में ये क्लॉज तो रहता ही है. डज नॉट एक्सरसाइज ड्यू डिलिजेंस. कुछ भी नहीं किया तो डज नॉट एक्सरसाइज ड्यू डिलिजेंस. आपने सिग्निफिकेंट अकाउंटिंग पॉलिसीज नहीं डाली है, डज नॉट एक्सरसाइज ड्यू डिलिजेंस. आपने एक सिंपल भाई वैल्यूएशन के बराबर मेथड्स नहीं डाली है, या लास्ट ईयर एक डाली थी, एक साल दूसरी डाली है, डज नॉट एक्सरसाइज ड्यू डिलिजेंस. राइट, मेनी थिंग. आई मीन इसमें अगर केस डिस्कस करने जाऊं तो मेरे 2 घंटे इसमें हो जाएंगे. Correct. So this is a very important clause. And lastly, a member of the institute in practice will be guilty if he brings disrepute, if in the opinion of a council brings disrepute to the profession by his action, whether or not related to the profession. मतलब हम प्रोफेशन के बाहर भी जब एक्ट करते हैं तो हमारे इंस्टीट्यूट का नाम ऊपर ही रखना चाहिए. हमने ऐसा कुछ नहीं करना चाहिए कि जिससे इंस्टीट्यूट को डिसरेप्यूट मिले. करेक्ट. सो ट्रैफिक सिग्नल थोड़ा एग्जैगरेटेड मैनर में कहते हैं तो हम डिसरेप्यूट ला सकते हैं इंस्टीट्यूट को, थोड़ा एग्जैगरेशन है. बट ट्रैफिक सिग्नल तोड़ने के बाद अगर पुलिस ने हमको पकड़ा एंड देन वी स्टार्ट फाइटिंग एंड नेक्स्ट न्यूज पे आ गया वो टेलीविजन पे, या देन डेफिनेटली इट इज ब्रिंगिंग डिसरेप्यूट टू द प्रोफेशन. सो फ्रेंड्स, वी आर required to be completely diligent, 100% diligent in our professional duties and 100% professional in our other duties also, so that we are not bringing disrepute to the profession. So while interpreting this code of ethics, I always go by these words of Swami Vivekananda. If there is a conflict between your heart and brain, follow your heart. Your brain will suggest you many ways, but अगर दिल बोलता है कि ये सही है तो ही करो, otherwise please don't do it. And lastly friends, this is the pandemic time. I hope everyone is taking care, as Asawaji said in the beginning. So please take care. While taking care, I'll conclude this session in a pandemic words only, that ethics should not be your mask. हम लोग मास्क तो पहनते हैं ना अभी, बट एथिक इज नॉट मास्क. मास्क कब पहनते हैं? हमको जब चाहिए तब पहनते हैं, जब नहीं चाहिए तब बाजू में रख देते हैं हम. एथिक्स इज आवर फेस एंड नॉट मास्क, प्लीज रिमेंबर. एंड लास्टली, सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग वर्ड बहुत आजकल फेमस है. प्लीज कीप सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग फ्रॉम द क्लाइंट एज फार एज आवर प्रोफेशन इज कंसर्न, बिकॉज इफ वी स्टेप इन द शूज ऑफ क्लाइंट और क्लाइंट के नजदीक जाते हैं तो ये जो वायरस है ना, ये हमको अफेक्ट हो रहा है. And then these disciplinary matters take place. These clients only file cases many times against us. So please keep social distancing with the clients. Thank you very much for patient listening. I hope I am able to bring some interest in the subject and solve some of your issues and add some positivity to it rather than negativity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mangesh bhai. Swapnil, if you can,
yes sir,
we can take 2-3 questions.
Yes, I don't think so. We can take all the questions, but we'll take certain questions. Alternatively, Mangesh sir is a resident of Thane, and I would request him to share his email ID and mobile number in the chat box. So, any one of you, if you have any queries which are not solved now, you can always contact him, and he will always be happy to help you all.
Sure, sure.
If that's
Swapnil,
sure, sir.
you can share my mobile number.
Yes, sir.
Okay, only one thing, please. I'm requesting all. I can answer your calls, not your mails, mainly because if I write something, then I mean, I should not. I don't want to give it to you in writing on these answers. Please, you will understand. I hope you will understand what I'm going to say.
Yes, yes.
You can always call me, no problem at all.
Sure, yeah. So the first question that we would take is, what should the previous auditor do if the new auditor does not communicate the previous auditor and don't know the details of the new auditor? And also, another question I'd like to merge: what if the amount, the audit fees is outstanding? Then what should you do?
See, typically, this is always an issue when you are unceremoniously removed from this kind of a work, and you don't know who is a new auditor, and you don't know how to communicate with him. Frankly speaking, it is up to you how to find out. Institute has not suggested anything. You can complain to the institute and such and such thing has happened. Especially if your fees is not paid, you're a statutory auditor, it can be easily found out, not in that year, but subsequent year, at least when the filings will be done, right? But and you can find it from the ROC also, that who has done that statutory audit, and the fees non-payment is applicable for statutory audit only. So as far as statutory audit, you can definitely find out, but for internal audit, if no communication is there, it's very difficult to find out. I also agree with that, and in fact, somebody has asked me earlier also. I have written to institute whether the guidance can be given in this regard or not. You can send me a mail, I can forward it to the institute, or you can directly write to Ethical Standard Board, email Ethical Standard Board, that what can be done. But right now, there is no solution as such in this, except for our kind of a inquisitiveness, inquiry, and detectiveness in this. As far as statutory audit, we can definitely find out after a year.
Sure, sir. So moving on to the next question. Someone wanted to understand that, is there any time limitation for filing a complaint against a chartered accountant with the ICAI?
No, typically we have to go by the Limitations Act. If I'm not wrong, 6 years is a Limitation Act period. There was one case when the Limitation Act was invoked in front of our bench only by a renowned advocate. But 6 or 8 years, I think the Limitation Act is there. We have to see the Limitation Act. Limitation Act period is a limitation for us.
So there are a couple of questions on professional, on insurance related thing. Can chartered accountants act as an insurance agent? And if at all they get any commission and the form of a professional fee for suggesting a client or for getting a new client, how will that be looked from an ethical point of view?
It is not at all allowed, frankly speaking. Agency, it is expressly mentioned that it is not allowed. Agency, as far as management consultancy and other services are concerned, it is very clearly mentioned that agency is not allowed. As far as getting commission for referring a person to an insurance company, it amounts to insurance agency. So naturally, it will again be not allowed. And we are not allowed to do this kind of an activity.
So the next question is, a lot of time chartered accountants do pay from his own account taxes on behalf of his client, which is later on reimbursed. So from the ethics point of view, is there any wrongdoing on this part?
To my mind, yes. To my mind, yes, because we are stepping in the shoes of the management. We are not basically which service we are giving here. Can we lend to our client? This is kind of a lending to a client, especially if it's a statutory audit. I mean, any kind of an audit. Statutory audit. Statutory audit means any audit under any statute. If you are doing for that client, it is definitely a gross misconduct, because we are lending to the client. The independence is at stake. As far as other clients is concerned, it is not a good practice, according to me, that if you are stepping in the shoes of the client, that's not a correct action.
So the other two questions are merging. Can a practicing CA become a member of board member of a management of a UCB, wherein professional fees are received from the bank? And another question.
Can you just repeat? Sorry, I just missed out.
Yes, sir. Can a practicing chartered accountant be a member of the management of UCB? I'm not sure about the UCB term over here.
Urban Cooperative Bank.
Urban Cooperative Bank.
Okay, wherein professional fees could be received from the bank. And the other question, not exactly related to bank, but can a practicing chartered accountant become a shareholder and a director?
See, one thing is clear as far as Urban Cooperative Bank is concerned. If you are receiving a professional fee and not a statutory audit fee, correct? Then I mean professional fee in terms of say consultation fee. Director, if you are there, perhaps according to me there should not be an issue, but from the banking perspective there will be an issue from a cooperative, because then you are not an independent director. You cannot become a other than independent director. So from that perspective, I think this is not allowed. The second question was whether you can become a shareholder and a director, right?
Yes, sir.
Of what?
Nothing. It's been kept open, sir. Maybe of a
Private limited company, say.
See, if a company, if it's a company, there is a clear-cut what you can say disqualification under Companies Act, that you cannot hold a single share in a company if you're a statutory auditor. As far as internal audit is concerned, there's no ban. Similar thing will be applicable to the cooperative bank also, or any bank also for that matter. In fact, you are holding a share, then you are not eligible to conduct the audit. In a statutory audits also, if you are holding a share of say Bank of India, right, you cannot conduct a statutory bank branch audit of a Bank of India.
So there are many other questions. I'll just take the last
Mangesh,
question.
Dhananjay sir ने कुछ question पूछा sir.
Internal audit, Dhananjay, na?
No, Mangesh, I will just repeat that question. It was about board of management of Urban Cooperative Bank. It is not management of cooperative bank. The question is that if someone is practicing CA, can he become a member of board of management, because he will be drawing professional fees in other capacity. He is not an auditor. He is not a consultant also. He will become a member of board of management.
Yeah, I know your question regarding that, and that independence standards I check. That independence requirements are there for the other engagement also. So if he is drawing a professional fees, perhaps it would amount to a business activity, according to me. I have written also in this regard. Perhaps it would amount to a business activity also, because he is actively involved in the management of the bank and is also drawing a fees from that bank.
So he may not be drawing audit fees per se. He is only a member of board of management. So he's not an auditor. He's not taking up any assignment.
Okay. You are saying from other engagement perspective. That's what I'm saying. Board of management is you can become an independent director, a director simpliciter in any organization. Now, board of management, perhaps he will be signing many places. So according to me, board of management also is a violation of that director simpliciter principle.
But then it's a bigger question actually, because most of the banks are approaching CS to take up the post of board of management.
I know. In fact, if I'm not wrong, there is one guide. If I can forward it to you, there is one ethical standard board decision also on this.
Okay.
That you cannot become you cannot be a management consultant bank or something of that sort. I can forward that decision to you.
Okay.
So the last question I'll take for today is, this is something that hits a lot of people. What is regular trading of shares? Because a lot of chartered accountants do invest in shares. So what is regular trading of shares?
I mean, this is again a question of fact. I mean, you will have to decide as per the case, each case. Now, I have suggested you that regular trading means quantum wise also and frequency wise also. If it is being done regularly, see, monthly once I am doing. I mean, this is again an interpretation part. Monthly once I am doing. See, how many scripts I am dealing in. Now, all these things will be important to decide that matter. Right. So if it is being done on a regular basis, regularity means what? So there is some periodicity in that. There is regularity. There's आज लिया और 3 महीने 4 महीने बाद लिया, बाद में 2 महीने बाद वापस लिया, फिर बाद में 3-4 महीने के बाद लिया, and that is not regular according to me, right? Or if I'm holding major chunk, no problem, but I'm holding it for substantial period of time and then getting a gain from that. I'm not going as per income tax definition, mind you, but here what is an intention? Intention, I mean, courts have also pronounced that intention behind this clause is that chartered accountant should not be involved in other activities disregarding his profession. That is one thing, right? That is a regulating the profession. This clause is for regulating the profession. And if you see from that perspective, मेरा time कितना जाने वाला है इसमें? I mean, one can say that मेरा कुछ नहीं जाता, मैं तो खाली एक click पे करता हूँ. But still, I think the facts will remain in this regard, important in this regard.
Thank you so much, Mangesh sir. For the other questions, I'm really sorry because of the time paucity, we won't be able to take all the questions. But we would definitely, you could get in touch with Mangesh sir and he'll be happy to help you all. Mangesh sir, we have a request for sharing the slide, the presentation with us so that we can forward it to the participants.
I'll give you.
Sir, if it is in PPT, if it is in WhatsApp, then it will be more better because we have 2 groups. We can upload in the WhatsApp group.
I will give you PDF. आपको जो करना है करो.
ठीक है.
Sure, sir.
But only thing is that many questions normally raised regarding certificates and reports. चेयरमैन सर को मैं सजेस्ट कर रहा हूँ, मेरा होना नहीं होना अलग है, बट सर्टिफिकेट रिपोर्ट के ऊपर आप एक सेशन रखोगे तो अच्छा रहेगा. I could not take it because time was not that much that I can go through that entire kind of a certificates and all. But that will be very good session if we can do it. And as regards queries are concerned, you can mail me, Swapnil. I can study that. But individual member, if they want answer, please call me because
Sure,
I don't want to answer it on mail. Writing में लिखना यही एक सीख perhaps I think important है. As I was speaking regarding the digital signature also. Whenever you're putting something in writing, you are committing those things. So please take care of that.
Sure, sir. I would now request everyone that we do attend tomorrow's and the following 3 seminars in the upcoming 3 days organized by the Thane branch for Vocal for Local at the same timing. Before going ahead, I would now request CA Suren Thakur Desai, the past chairman of Thane branch, to present the formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Swapnil. It was really a wonderful session. It is rightly said, theory knowledge is splendid, but until put into practice, it is valueless. Today's session has been an eye-opener to a lot of us, giving us inputs on various practical difficulties faced by fellow CAs while trying to work within the ethical framework. I have a firm belief that after today's session, we would be able to view our professional world a little differently, maybe with a little more caution and confidence. In my opinion, ethics is knowing the difference between what you have a right to do and what is right to do. Today's speaker, CA Mangesh Kinare, has rightly pointed out things what a chartered accountant should do while living his professional life. I have seen, and it is my experience that it takes around 20 years to build a reputation and just 5 minutes to ruin it. I want to thank you all for taking your valuable time for today's session. And more importantly, I would like to thank my friend, CA Mangesh Kinare, not only friend, but friend, guide, God, philosopher, godfather, everything, for enriching us with his knowledge and experience. Hope to meet you all soon once this pandemic is over. But till then, let's stay connected via various seminars organized by Thane branch. I'm also thankful to our chairman Shivbhavan Asawa for arranging this Vocal for Local series and mainly this Code of Ethics session. It is really wonderful. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Mangeshji, once again. Take care and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Suren sir. Dear participants, I've shared Mangesh's number over the chat box. So kindly take a note of this and you can get in touch with him for any queries. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mangesh sir. Thank you, Asawaji. And thank you for every one of you for coming and attending this event in such large numbers.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Now seeking your permission to leave and end the session.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye.